Recording in progress. Okay, welcome everybody. Ooh, I'm excited for this episode. I am not gonna lie. Welcome to Hash Church Season 12, Episode 6, the Haze episode. I'm not gonna lie, I'm jacked for this episode. So excited to talk to you guys about Haze today. Whole bunch of drama overnight, managed to get it sorted out, figured out. I think we're good to go. As always, I would love to start the show, as I always do, by shouting out my sponsors because they're awesome and we love them. So let's see if we can't start with our good friends at the Press Club. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, today's episode of Hash Church is proudly supported by the Press Club. Yeah, the Press Club. California brothers obsessed with hash and everything solventless, just like us. Their journey didn't start as a business, it started as a family. Back in 2014, when a loved one wasn't finding relief through conventional medicine, they turned back to the plant they respected their whole lives. They knew cannabis had medicinal power, but they needed something cleaner. That search led them to the solventless path, using nothing but water, heat, and pressure to let the plant express itself honestly. That light bulb moment turned into washing, pressing, experimenting, and eventually realizing how hard it was to find truly high quality rosin bags and solventless tools that were made in America and still affordable. So they did what real hash heads do. They built the solution themselves. The Press Club stands for clean process, conscious intention, and tools made by people who actually live this culture, not corporations chasing trends. We're very grateful to have the Press Club supporting Hash Church and the wider solventless community, family-run, purpose-driven, and rooted in why hash matters in the first place. Much love to the Press Club, and thank you for supporting church. You guys can check them out at www.thepressclub.co. So yeah, go check them out. And at Hash Church, we talk a lot about ritual, respect for the plant, and elevating the experience. And that's exactly why we're proud to be supported by Puffco. Puffco continues to set the standards for modern consumption with tools built for people who truly care about flavor, temperature, and intentional use. From the Puffco Peak Pro with the 3D XL bowl, delivering consistent heat, bigger hits, and unmatched volatile expression, to the Proxy, redefining modular ritual-based consumption, and the Pivot, bringing true Puffco performance into a compact everyday format. These aren't just gadgets, they're purpose-built tools for hash and solventless. We're genuinely grateful for Puffco's continued support of Hash Church, our guests, and our community. Their belief in education, culture, and quality helps us keep these conversations alive. You can support the brand that supports the culture. Visit www.puffco.com, explore their lineup, and experience what intentional design really feels like. Puffco, elevate the ritual. Who doesn't want to elevate the ritual? All right. Well, I'd be remiss to not mention my company. We wouldn't be here without the pioneers who helped define the solventless extraction, and bubble bags are a cornerstone of that history. Bubble bags helped introduce the world to ice water extraction, giving growers and hash makers a simple, effective way to separate resin using nothing but water, ice, and agitation. Decades later, our bags remain a trusted tool for people who care about purity, process, and tradition. From home runs to professional washes, bubble bags continue to support true solventless craft, allowing the plant to speak for itself. We're proud to be supported by Bubble Bags and grateful for the ongoing support of Hash Church, our guests, and the global hash community. Our commitment to quality and accessibility has empowered generations of makers. You can support the brand that built the culture by visiting www.bubblebag.com. Explore their extraction bags and accessories and keep the solventless tradition alive. Bubble Bags, water, ice, hash. Yeah, baby. All right. Well, we have a new gentleman who signed up this year. Sorry that picture is not as clear as it should be. Maybe we just got to make it a little smaller. Maybe not. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's how it is going to look. So Helio Supply is dedicated to offering innovative, high-quality vape hardware and accessories designed to enhance the consumption experience. While maintaining discretion and performance, their product range focuses on precision voltage control, durable construction, and components that protect extracts from overheating. Allowing users to preserve flavor and efficiency on their own terms while not making health claims, Helio Supply emphasizes education and responsible consumption, striving to help consumers escape the stigma associated with plant-based concentrates and extracts. Jared is the owner of that company. I met him recently here at the Grow Up conference, and he said, "What can I do to be a part of this?" He's good friends with Logan, our good friend Wolverine Dabs down in Wenatchee, and really just an awesome guy. So let's, without further ado, start letting in the panel. Looks like we got 3 folks waiting, so apologies for that. I got everything recording. I'm live on YouTube. I think we are golden. So there we go. A, B, C, D. Look at that. If I was an A, Budulero would be the B, and Caleb would be the C, and Dom would be the D. We got an alphabetical thing going on here today. So, yes, good to see you guys. Welcome.
Yo, Marcus.
Hey,
Hey, guys.
good to see you, Dom.
Hey, man.
So you're in the facility, and are you in Amsterdam or just outside of Amsterdam?
I'm outside of Amsterdam, so I'm in the south of the Netherlands.
Okay,
So
nice.
checking up on the trials on a Sunday evening.
It's Karma
For you,
lives
it's
down
Sunday
there,
morning.
doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. He
Yeah,
does.
cool. I didn't end up getting him a link, but if you have a way to send him a link, that would be great to invite him onto
I
the show.
I can text him.
Yeah, text
So
him. Karma, man, Karma's such a good dude. You know, all these
hold on.
I remember not seeing him for a long time and him having like crazy health problems or something. I can't remember what that was about, but I have a
Well, all of
vague
us have that at some point.
well, it's called getting old. I was waiting for
Yeah,
Budulero to look up and give us a smile while he was eating his breakfast.
let me see.
How you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing well. I ran into Dave from modular yesterday. He gave me some haze and some pearls hash to smoke during this episode. So,
Oh my God, he told me that, dude. That is so awesome. I got this I guess this Tom Hill haze from a guy here in Canada who preferred not to be shouted out, but he sent me a little clone and then he sent me some flour as well and I just, like, dude, I am just I don't even know how to explain it, but I guess I'm like, I've always been a huge Haze fan, but when I cut herb out and when I stopped smoking herb, Haze disappeared. I mean, aside from hitting the odd dab of Jack or something, Congo esque or something, there was no real. And then we'll even say that, I love hitting Haze concentrates because he sent me some of that as well. The gentleman who sent me the clone as well as the flower. This is like
What's
a
going
rocket
on?
ship to the moon. Oh, yeah, we got you. You guys are unmuted. I can hear you, Budulero. Dave, how you doing, buddy?
Good, are you?
Very good, very good. I'm probably going to roll up one of these
Why are
hazers.
we hearing 3 voices?
Oh, because you don't have your headphones on. So your speakers are picking up the voices that are coming out, like your microphone's picking up your speakers. So when you don't talk, it's best to just mute your mic, and then when you do talk, we'll all mute our mics, except Dr. Mark. He'll come in and he won't mute his mic. But hey, what are you going to do? You can't tell these PhDs anything.
FYI, Marcus, I just texted Karma, so he might be on or he might not.
Yeah, well, that would
So
be
who
great.
knows?
I know that it would be good to catch up to him, and he's always. I mean, my goodness, that cross he did with the Amnesia Haze, the "Where is my bike?"
Oh yeah.
There's real story. I don't know if too many of you guys know the story behind "Where is my bike," but apparently he had given it to a friend of his, and if he comes in, he'll be able to clarify. But I guess his friend lost his bike, and so it turned into they named the cultivar "Where is my bike," which was pretty funny. It was stepped up by Skunkman Sam, and I'd have to ask Soma what they were smoking the day that Sam went over to Soma's and lost his van. He, of course, thought it was stolen. He left Soma's so stoned, he thought it was stolen. And he reported it stolen and got the insurance. And I think it was months later, he was at Soma's again and he went down a different street to leave and he saw his van there with like the full boot, like 500 tickets on the front of it. So this is a pretty epic story of smoking and forgetting where something is. That's on another level. Oh, God bless Sam. We miss you, buddy. We miss you.
Yeah.
He's never far.
No, always
Shout out,
smoked.
shout out to Sam. I've got his little jar of ashes here. And I'll just put them probably on my little, I'll put them on my little Haze clone that I got here. Just sit it in
Well,
the dirt.
I might just be smoking some tonight because
Yeah,
we
so
already planted this ashes with one of the haze plants, you know.
right.
So
So you have all sorts of haze plants in this facility, correct, Dom?
yeah, we have a few, the ones that Ryan gave me,
Why
but we
don't
have
you give a small introduction as to who you are, what Inexo is, and then get into what Ryan gave you.
all right. So I come from humble beginnings. So as a home grower, I was fascinated by different types of plants. I grew my first landrace variety, which was a Colombian variety that I got from bag seed from the coffee shop. So I used to go to the coffee shop, ask for like the cheapest import brick variety that they have, and I would sift out the seeds and grow them. So that's like almost 20 years ago. I've been around, you know, starting as a home grower, making my way over to the cannabis social clubs in Belgium, then spent at least 6 years in biotech pharma. And then in 2021, I co-founded and started Inexo. And we are basically a testing station for all things cannabis cultivation related. So what we have here in Europe and predominantly like in the Netherlands and in Belgium, where I live, we have testing stations for every major crop: strawberries, orchids, tomatoes, cucumbers, where licensed producers, or in this case, just growers, can come together, share knowledge, do trials, improve on their practices. And so what I thought was like, okay, what if we could do this for cannabis? Because cannabis, there's so much yet to be discovered. And yeah, so we established Inexo in the Netherlands, got a license to perform R&D, and we've been doing cool stuff ever since. So going on 5 years now. And so for us, it's important to create value to this industry by providing rigorous data sets, doing trials, but also in terms of preservation. I was collecting seeds, from the first moment I started doing anything with cannabis cultivation. And so I always had this interest in collecting seeds and preserving them for when they would fit a purpose. So we do our best to preserve whatever old genetics there still are. So we create a living library of different types of land race varieties, as you call them, like the narrow leaf drug varieties. Everything from Malawi, Indian, Thai, South America, Honduras. We have a bunch of those here. And one of the things that we are trying to do with Inexo is figuring out how we can bring those long flowering varieties back into commercial circulation, right? So all the licensed producers are focusing on what has the highest THC or whichever variety finishes the fastest. But we believe that there's still a lot of the medicinal properties of cannabis aren't reaching the patients because a huge chunk of the gene pool is being forgotten or left out deliberately because it's hard to produce or costs more money to produce. So we are working on some new ways, some novel ways with technology that's available right now to find cultivation systems in which it is economically viable for licensed producers to start differentiating themselves from the masses and start producing these long flowering varieties in a way they basically should be produced, and
it's
provide
kind
that
of
to
the
patients.
how much can we get and how fast can we get it
Yeah,
mentality that really, it's why
yeah,
I have such an incredible appreciation for the people that choose to what's the right terminology that choose to caretake for these genetics, that choose,
Yep.
the 20-week flower over the 6 to 7, that, and it's, it's always a pull. You always see, and not all of them. I doubt Budulero was on this page, but I always see a lot of the Haze guys constantly like, oh, I'm trying to get it down to 9 weeks. And I'll always be like,
Uh,
why? Don't do
no,
that.
like here, for
It's
example,
not the same.
we yeah, no, it's not the same exactly. Tony. So here you see the original modular plants from the hazes that Ryan donated.
So tell us a little bit about
So
those Hazes.
I think that's a great story for Ryan to tell.
Okay, well,
But
he's running a little bit
let
late. We can get him in to
I
tell
know.
these stories. But these seeds came from Skunk Man. Oh, look at that. Jeez. Speak of the
Yeah,
devil. His ears must have been
yeah,
burning.
they, there we go. So Ryan, if you're there, please tell the story about how the hazes ended up at my place. First, how they ended up in your hands, and then
Yeah,
you
he's
know.
just joining for whatever reason. It's taking
Okay.
him a while. Oh no, there he is. So welcome, Ryan. We were just touring Dom's garden at Inexo, and he got up to the seeds that you gave him, and I was like, "You should tell us a little bit about those seeds." And he said, "Well, it would be better if Ryan told that story." And
Yeah.
then there you were to tell the story. So he's got the seed, he's got the hazers.
So Ryan, these are our plans, buddy.
Looking great, man, as always. Dom is a really good grower, and their facility is very cool. I was lucky
Appreciate
to
that.
go down there while I was over in Amsterdam, and I I know David would be incredibly proud of what you're doing there, and so I
Yeah.
took a few of the haze that he had given me from my own little collection at Horner Farm and brought them down to kind of represent Sam at the facility where you're doing all that great work. So yeah, Dave, as you know, David's whole life was about cannabis research, and you operate under the same type of license that he, I think, was maybe the first cannabis grower to
Yeah, he was the first.
under. So yeah, he'd be thrilled to see what you're doing, brother. I know he'd be checking in with you every day or
So
every week and coming down to visit and
Ryan,
everything. So
I I don't know if you can see this. So this room is actually the room where we normally do like the seed fingerprinting and the seed phenotyping, but because of a shortage in space, we had to temporarily move our mother plants there. But because we are working with seeds in this room normally, we dubbed this room CD Future, with the D standing for David and not for Dom, because he's the one that started it all basically.
Amen to that. Well, here's something you don't see every day: Bubble Man smoking a joint.
Oh,
Well,
So,
we've been seeing it more often, bro. I like it. I might have to
That's
join you. I got some haze over here rolled up.
well, I actually had some young bucks private message me and tell me how to properly light a joint. So that was nice.
oh,
Oh shit.
oh.
Okay. Always something to learn, man.
Hey, I'm learning every day here, man.
that's
Shout out
fun.
to the brother who sent this haze to me, by the way. Unbelievable. So lovely. I believe it was a 15-weeker. Quite lovely. In fact, today, if anyone wants to share pictures, please let me know, because I think a big part of this show will be, kind of sharing the photos and the bud structures and whatnot. Here's a couple that I took of the plant that I'm puffing on right now.
Oh, that's beautiful, man.
Fits the phenotype. It's a little
It
compressed.
looks right, right?
Yeah.
Dude, who would think that bud like this? Imagine seeing bud like this so long ago, where you were just like thought you were going to get a big fat bud, but you got this little tiny kind of waspy. And then for me, it's just, I'm not impressed with the big PGR'd out nuggets that just look completely nothing like this. I just have a real appreciation for this.
Well, if
God
you saw
bless it.
that in the day, you'd be, and you were in the know, you'd know what it was, right? Especially taking a maturity like that. I mean, that's pretty resinous.
Yeah, he said he took it to 16 weeks, and it actually, I ask you guys over at the Budulero group there if you've ever seen this, but he said at 16 weeks, it kind of like energy wise, like just dropped off a little. He said he was taking it at 14 to 15, 14 and 15 weeks were almost identical. So I think he actually took this one at 14, but I don't have a clear, what do you got there, Don?
Yeah, this is the from the haze that Ryan gave me. So this was 165 days constantly on 12/12.
Hell
And so
yeah.
Dom, you have to
you
flex your grams per square watt on that.
dude, you have to smell this, man. It's smell-o-vision, man. I'm waiting for that, you know. But it's been in the jars now for uh three months, I believe. But wow. And it's still curing, so keep it in the freezer, right? And it's still curing. So I have some cool pictures for later on that particular haze. Um, so I'm gonna show them to you later on. But yeah, as Ryan says, grams per watt, it was, you know, that was crazy, that one.
What was the
Yeah.
grams per watt?
Well, so when we calculate yield, basically we um, take into account the time it takes and the amount of cycles you can do. So in terms of grams per square meter per year, that's how we calculate the yield. You get with the hazes that we did, and so it's the ones that Ryan gave me, was about 4 kilograms per square meter per year. And the amount of wattage that we put the LEDs on there was about 200 watts
per year.
So we grew them in this intercanopy lighting system, so without any top lighting, just using the side lighting for the haze. And that's actually perfect because that plant wants to grow tall, like really tall. So if you then have lights from the top going down, then the lower buds won't develop properly. So what we did, we after extensive testing, of course, that we knew that this was possible. We switched off the top lights and just installed 4 levels of intercanopy lights. And that meant, and we can come back to the pictures later, that meant that basically half of the plant was illuminated from the side. And there was a big chunk of the plant that, didn't get any light above like 50 micromoles, just from the ambient light in the greenhouse. And what we saw is that those like main flowers, those flowers on the top, they developed, as they would normally with lights on them, because the middle part of the plant was getting so much light intensity that it shot all that energy up. So that's how we came to be, 200 watts on a square meter with a yield of around 4 kilograms, and that is dry finished flower, so no trimming whatsoever.
Yeah, but
And
you're
that's actually
testing
something.
everything over there too, right? You're not just like, oh,
Yeah.
we put these lights on and we noticed the difference. Like
No,
everything is like
no.
data driven.
Yeah.
You're a
Yeah,
data driven
yeah,
company.
Yeah.
yeah. That's it.
You should kind of expand on that, because I think a lot of people could hear you and be like, oh yeah, I do that too. It's like, do
So,
you?
for example, to really test this, how we came about such a test took us a few years. So we first did a large intercanopy trial with Fluence that was sponsoring that trial that we did for them. And what we noticed is that if you redistribute your light a little bit differently, you kind of homogenize the canopy. So in that trial, we took around 30% of the intensity of the top light, dimmed down that top light, and put that light intensity inside the canopy through under canopy lighting. And so we saw those results, no increase in yield or secondary metabolites, but the better microclimates, and overall higher quality grade. So then we started experimenting with what how does the plant react if you give 50% from the top and 50% inside the canopy? And so those trials yielded incredible results because we saved about 35% electricity and we got 15% more yield on average, depending on the variety a little bit. So then I went to step it up a notch, and then I did like normal varieties without any top light at all. And then I did the land races, so the longer flowering ones, like the 16-week Honduras variety or 14-week Laos, 14-week 16-week Malawi, And then when Ryan came to visit, he was like, "Okay, I got these Haze seeds that I would like to donate." I was like, "Okay, here we go. So we go see the real longer flowering ones." But we had all that previous data already from the different trials, so I kind of knew how this could go. But still, those plants, they surprised me, and we got great yields off of those. So with the Hazes, I got like in the same window of yield that I would do with a normal commercial variety. That's like 7-8 weeks, right? So you do less runs, but because those Haze and those narrow leaf drug cultivars, they are profusely, they go super high, super wide. And if you adjust your cultivation system, there is actually no reason why on the yearly basis those plants should yield less than modern day cultivars in terms of grams per area per time unit.
And you have half the labor cost in planting, right?
Oh yeah. So another thing about those long flowering varieties, there's nothing to it. You just put them there. You don't fetch them or pre-fetch them. We don't do that anyways. But the plant is used to shed its leaves. So by harvest time, you'll hardly have any fan leaves left on them, which makes the post-harvest handling a lot easier and a lot less risk heavy. So yeah, in terms of labor, it's just sitting there and watch it grow basically.
So is part of your mission to kind of bring back, I mean, obviously it's hard to convince people to grow hazers, mainly because, at this point in time, to me, for the last 30 years, the people who grew haze just never gave a fuck about that. They had to remove themselves from the how much can I get and how fast can I get it mentality of prohibition, which really was a driving force. I don't care what anyone says. Before anyone was talking about patience or any of that, they were asking, how much can I get and how fast can I get it? And I remember 35 years ago when everyone had already spent their entire crop before they even planted their seeds. Like my buddies would be like, "Oh, I'm going to do this and I got this and I'm doing that." And I'm just like, dude, you should just grow the weed. Like try and just grow the weed. We've obviously come a long way, but obviously being able to be economically viable is I mean, this is kind of what today's show is about, bringing together a small group of people who in their own way are not only caretaking for these plants, but they're also trying to get them to a, like Budulero, getting it to a commercial, making it available. Like, can you imagine you could just go buy the Budulero pearls in California? Like, holy shit. I want to be able to do that everywhere, dude. I mean, sure, I know I could go wherever I go and visit people who have these cultivars, but I want it for everyone. I want everyone.
End of the month.
End of the month.
It's fucking happening. They're trimmed.
Awesome.
By the time they go through the ringer of regulation, packaging will be here. I mean the packaging is going to get finalized this week. I can send things off to get packaged, and by the end of the month, or I'd get tested by the end of the month, it's going to be a reality.
You got to think that would just sell
awesome,
out
man.
immediately. I mean, I know we're a smaller group, the Haze lovers, but not that small. And then the thing about the Haze lover is they'll buy half of it. It's not like they'll go and buy one. They'll be like, no, I want as much as I can get.
There's only 1 pound. And after I put it in front of Snoop Dogg's face next week, there might not be any left.
Ooh,
Hey,
Jesus.
one thing I want to recognize to the audience is like what Dom is done in terms of a business decision is really unique, and I got to give you your flowers, man, because you're
Appreciate that.
using technology and data to kind of inform your passion, like what you want
Yeah,
to grow these, let's just call it these outlandish varietals that take, they don't fit inside the box of what we know to be commercial cannabis, and that's
yep,
as in from operator to operator, like I see you, like that's really that takes a lot of balls, like just say it, and it takes a lot of just really understanding, where you're at in terms of your actual practice, and going through that is there's some really hard decisions to make and to lean into the under canopy lighting like you are, but also recognize that you know, up here and where the majority of, let's say, the energy is coming from, maybe not the best place to pull or allow the plant to pull from. That's, I wish other operators around the world would take those types of chances and bet on themselves like that, because that's how we get to these conversations and how the material actually does sit on the shelf, and we can stop talking about why doesn't this exist, and we can start talking
yeah.
about problem solving, and
Oh, yeah.
that's at the heart of it all. I see you as a problem solver, and that's really amazing. And I think we kind of brushed over it in a way that I just wanted to highlight and give you your flowers on, because it's
Yeah, well,
most
Appreciate that,
people just
Colin.
don't think like that,
if I
man,
can say too, I mean,
so
no, the cannabis industry has really persisted on bullshit marketing for years, right?
yeah,
Because a lot of these companies that are servicing the cannabis industry, they can't touch the plant, right?
yeah,
And
Yep.
so Dom's business model or an Exo's business model gives them the ability to do the research that they need to make the claims that they do about their products,
yeah,
right?
Yep.
So it really is like this crucial service to the industry as a CRO, where independent growers can do the testing with the real science backup of the Dutch commercial
Yep.
industry, not only the cannabis industry and the lab support, but all like Holland is a really incredible country in terms of plants. People don't realize that it's the second largest exporter by value of all agricultural products on the planet, right? So
yeah,
for this tiny little nation like way north, they do such incredible growing, mostly in greenhouses, but because it's such a challenging environment, they've developed all this technology to support the plant growth industry or horticulture industry. And
yeah,
Dom's able to tap into that in a way that no other, even Canada, we don't tap into that kind of research.
yeah,
He took me to this research campus. When I was there, he took me to this research campus to see um, Holland has
East order.
centralized one laboratory for all of the
Yeah.
cannabis industry.
Oh yeah.
So they don't have this problem between interlab variability. But anyway, on this lab is on a part of a horticultural campus, and they have like this seed phenotyping technology. And we went and visited a lab that does. They create pure isolates of either bacteria or different fungal pathogens, so that those can be suspended into like an inoculum culture, and then the plants can be sprayed with powdery mildew, right?
Yep.
So or fusarium or botrytis, right? So like you'll see a lot of people in the cannabis industry that'll say, "Oh, I've got this powdery mildew resistant variety, or I've got a variety that's resistant to
Uh,
botrytis,"
give
but
me a
there's
go at
been
it.
no yeah, but there's been no challenge, right? Like to do that type of research, you have to do a biological challenge where you actually spray
Yep.
the plant with the pathogen in a controlled manner, so that all the plants are getting dosed the same way. And from that kind of experiment, you can actually really infer true resistance, right?
Yep.
So when we see people on on the forums and online all the time talking about their resistant varieties. They've never undergone like a challenge, whereas Dom is set up to do all those kinds of experiments. So it really is next level R&D, right? And the type that's just we don't see in the cannabis industry. So I was really impressed. And if you have product a cannabis support industry like lighting or growing equipment or whatever. It's like Dom really provides the facility and the outlet now that you can hire a grower to do those tests without having to build yourself a facility. It's a great thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ryan. And I'd like to say a few more things. Like we exist to de-risk the cannabis industry, right? So when like it is very, very good and very okay that licensed producers do their own R&D in-house, but you cannot do everything. And you have to really pick your battles if you're a licensed producer on what types of R&D you are running at your facility. And as Ryan said, if you have like a variety that is resistant to powdery mildew, or you're having trouble finding new varieties like peanut hunting or whatever, like we can do all that cool stuff. And we have a very high risk profile, but we learn how to deal with it. So we basically live in a zoo. So when I'm selecting for uh, research varieties, because not all research is the same. Um, I don't want any weak plants. I want plants that can handle the type of research that I'm doing. But if I cannot stress test those plants or those cultivars myself by inoculating with any type of disease or chucking canisters of spider mites on them to see how the plant fares, or like any product testing that we do, um, you know, then I couldn't provide those services to other companies. Let us take the risk and let us de-risk all the other companies. And big shout out to Tony and Dave. I mean, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing at Bajularo. Really big fan. And it is like the progress, like build it and they will come, right? And that's sometimes that happens. And it is great that you guys, getting the pearls again out there, getting those landrace varieties known by consumers. Because if consumers or patients only know, let's say, 10 to 20% of what the cannabis plant is capable of, you know, um, they don't know everything. And they might just find out, I like the pearls more than a very stony Afghanica. So big props to what you guys are doing over there. And as I said before, it's also about the packaging. So it's great that you give that some thoughts. Basically, what you guys are creating is the XO cognac of the cannabis industry. We have good reds. We have great tasty whites, right? But nobody is making that cognac with like such a flower in a jar, gold seal on it, properly cured, slow aged. Nobody's doing that, and that's big up for you guys, man. I really appreciate you guys doing the work.
I appreciate it. I mean, I owe it all to him. Like I'm an idea guy. The first time I met him and smoked with him, I knew I wanted to. For me, the only way I was going to do it was do a light dep, because I was big on light dep at that point. But he's really opened me up to the other side of the plant spectrum. I'm thankful that I was at a point in my life where I could receive it and
Mm-hmm.
run with it, because
Yep.
I'm an idea guy. I've had a ton of ideas, but this one was just like the timing was right with where I was at, what he was telling me, showing me what I had then experienced for myself, and it just became this thing of like, all right, this is what I like now, and I'm in the California market. So as a super small everything, if we try to put out gelato or Skittles or permanent marker or any of this
Mm.
other stuff, we would fail miserably. So it wasn't even an option to try and compete. It was like, okay, well, here's an idea that not a lot of other people are doing, and if we can do it in a few right ways, we might have a chance. And it was like, there's two things here. I like to smoke this, he likes to smoke this. But if we're going to approach it from a business like you are, we're looking at it at a separate angle. Thankfully, both of those
Yep.
two things jive up. And that's what it's always been for me, is like, I was a big proponent of sour diesel when I was younger because I smoked a lot of it and I grew a lot of it. And
Mm-hmm.
now I don't smoke as much of it. I smoke the pearls and other stuff. And so I'm a big proponent of that. But, I think it just, it was a clear path It was a clear lane that was wide open. It was very interesting also because I've learned a tremendous amount after 25 years of growing. I've learned a tremendous amount. So yeah, it's just I'm just glad that he was here to pass it and I was open enough to receive it.
Well,
I'll
why
tell you
fight in a
how it
crowded
worked out.
lane? Rather, you're fighting in a crowded lane rather than creating your own lane, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
you guys, yeah, and you're
And
providing
that
something different to the industry. So it's a real win. I love what you guys are doing.
and it's it's kind of a scary thing, but I think we all know like that lane needs to be driven in. And however winding it may be, I feel like every week we have something that happens, whether small or medium, that it's stacking and it's stacking at a rate that we can handle. I used to work for a big company in Washington that did $1 million a month in grams. So I got to see how a large company thinks and operates and what happens when you get too big too fast, right?
Thank you so
And
much.
Tony is a even keel, not a like big, kind of guy. And so I was able to like realize we can only go so fast, we can only do so much, but it's going at a rate and we can build it at our own speed. And that's, I think, a huge blessing to be able to be the ones that determine what gear it's in, how it gets shifted, when, where, and all that stuff that a lot of
Yep.
big companies don't have the ability to do. So they just chase. And I've never been a chaser. I've always just done my own thing and put the blinders on. Like, I did what I did because I liked it, not because I thought people were going to buy it or think it was cool. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I wanted to dye my hair green when I was in high school because I thought it was cool, not because I thought the girls were going to like me.
There might have been that one girl.
Yeah.
I will say that it's also the only lane where the top is down, so it should be driven, that lane.
Yeah. But with cannabis, it's more like fashion. Certain stuff gets hyped, and then there's a period where it's not. So, for example, in the 90s,
It's pretty funny.
purple weed was all the craze here. Coming 2000s, purple you couldn't give it away for free, right? Now, if it's not purple, it's not selling in Cali, So, and exactly what you said, these lanes, they are meant to be driven in, and the only thing that you're going to see is how many cars are in that lane in a certain amount of time. So
Yeah, and there's a huge amount of interest from the consumer. Instagram is representative, at least in California. Instagram is representative of the black market, in my opinion, and not
yep.
necessarily the legal market. Because when I do demos in stores, I meet people that don't really know a lot about herb, and they don't know the difference between gelato and Skittles. But if they believe you, they'll buy what you tell them to buy. And
Yep.
because the only option is and has been X, Y, and Z, which are all the same, that's what they keep buying. But when I get a chance to get in front of these people, I get the impression that they're curious and that they
Yeah.
want to learn, they want to know, and that they're open. And
Yep.
when it's authentic, people try it, lo and behold, you tell the truth and you just be you, like, I don't know.
And
It's not
people
that
want to know
hard.
what they're putting, in their body. I think that's been my experience as well is, when you get down and actually speak to people that, are just way outside of our culture, and have their
Yeah.
own lives and their own cultures that they want cannabis to be
Well,
part of. And, they just want to know that it's coming from a place that, when they ingest this, much like food, they know they have some sort of understanding of process, and I think that's where you and your team kind of shine super bright in that realm. I do think there's a collective consciousness in terms of the shift of what people are looking for. So I think you're right
yeah,
on
and
with all that.
it's also about like the funny thing is, at my place, they cannot taste the cannabis, of course, right? But they can see the plants growing. And so
Mhm.
if I get guys from the US to my facility, I'll always have some, weird looking long flowering variety somewhere. Um, but like when I had our version of the pearls, which came from my AK-47 background, mutated AK-47, people were looking at this like, is this cannabis? But they see how beautiful the structure of those flowers is, you know, and so they immediately get like a new appreciation for what cannabis can be, and then they're wondering, hey, what would that feel like? Would that effect be different? Would the taste be different? Would it, you know, is the smokability different?
Yeah.
Um, and you know that's a big part of it, having people experiencing what cannabis can be like.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, it's
and I think what you're highlighting is the diversity.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking, a lot of people talk about, oh, we're bottlenecking. Well, it's like, well, what
Mm-hmm.
choices are those being made on, right? Is it
Mm-hmm.
is it because your facility is 9 weeks, or is it because you truly care about the plants and you want to grow something that is 9 weeks, or are you actually interested in the 26-week varietal? What is
Yep.
it? And I keep going back to that because we all know the answer. It's just, are we going to are we going to admit that? And I think what you're highlighting, Dom, is something that's I hope others kind of take a hold of in terms of concept, because it does allow you to grow these longer varietals and make it make sense.
Yep.
So it's
and that's from my end, you really have to market these in a different way, right?
Yep.
It's not the typical dispensary consumer that's just going to be like, oh, I know what this is and I want to buy it. And so connecting with the people that know what it is and want to buy it is a different model than the dispensary model. Um, and that's been my focus because I've realized there's stoners out there in California that still, the stoner culture, the smoker culture, the people that were buying weed in dispensaries during the 215 days that were stoked on diversity, stoked on quality, they never disappeared. They're just underserved. So now
Yep.
you have this faction of, you work in the weed industry and you grow it on your own because it ain't no thing to do, or someone in the industry and you get free weed because of it. And then there's the people that buy weed at retail stores that are uneducated or educated, right? And you know, the people still want it, they just don't know where to go. And I feel like with the bottlenecking, people are confused because they've kind of understood now what this bottlenecking is, at least
Mm-hmm.
like a certain portion of the consumers. And so now they're kind of like, well, I was misled. Now I'm confused. Where do I go? Um, but the people that love weed are still out there. And I feel like we've catered to the people that don't know what weed is because I've gone to LA twice in the last year and I've had a couple days to go to dispensaries. And in LA, they have these cool sniffer jars and you can smell what the weed smells like. And after the 10th dispensary, I can go in and know what I'm going to smell before I get there. So from a consumer standpoint, they've bought in 15 different strain names and it's all been the same. And they're like, okay, like I don't want to do that again, but it's my only option. And so we're really focused on connecting with people that are passionate about the type of herb that we have, understand what it is. So I don't have to fight to market and make sales. Because there's people that are like, all in, here you go right now. And then there's the people that are from, A to Z. That's a lot of wasted time to focus on people that just really don't understand it, and it's a hard
Mm-hmm.
sell. And there's a certain portion of people out there that don't need to be sold. They just are like, oh, wow, it's out there, where and now, you know?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
and it's
Yep.
nice to be able to do that because now we're back to connecting with each other. I'm talking with people in a direct way instead of it just being through a retail buyer, which is like a whole level of disconnect. And although we don't get to sit on the couch like Tony talks about and have that personal interaction, I am at least getting to notify people, talk to them, interact with them. And that is a basic human want, to be acknowledged. And
Yep.
we're acknowledging these people in a direct level. And I get feedback on a direct level that is, thank you so much for caring. Thank you so much for making this happen. Because like this week, I was able to make a couple things happen that was very difficult from my end, but the handful of people that it was directed towards were very appreciative of it. That makes me want to keep going. That lets them know that I'm going to keep going for them. And we build on that, and people are just like, wow, there's these reachable people. There's no one else behind us doing the demos, the brand ambassadors. Like, there's none of that shit. It's just directly to the people, and that's what people want because they don't know what else to gravitate towards. So they just talk to somebody about it. You know, it's not hard. You just got to be real. You got to be genuine and not be so big that you can't do those things. And that's, I built this whole thing in terms of the size of the greenhouse, the ability for me and my brother-in-law to be able to do everything is a huge advantage because it takes us days to trim pounds as opposed to one day. And the visual quality on that is representative of a homegrown product. And I had to show him, hey, look, this is how you've done it on the trim scenes. This is the only way we're going to do it. And he is an excellent trimmer in high demand. But when I kind of was like, this is the level where it needs to be at, it clicked. And he was like, wow, this is a level above. And guess what? People appreciate that because the people that want hazes and this special weed don't care about the price. They love it. They appreciate these things.
Yep. Yep.
Well, it's unique, right? It's something that you just can't acquire otherwise. And I think, you know, part of the thing that makes people confused about True Haze is that most people just call it sativa, and what most people call sativa is a hybrid. It's not like a pure haze or a equatorial landrace, whatever you want to call it, whatever the proper terminology is. It's just like a diluted, watered down version, always towards the how much can I get and how fast can I get it sort of direction. So, you know, when you find something that's truly special like that, you have to be appreciative of someone who's willing to actually grow it so you can trim it and cure it and all of these things so that you can just go there and buy it, which is,
and it's great too. Like, we have some retail partners that take the chance on us. You know, like we just dropped something last week and it's more expensive than everyone else, than everything else we have on the menu. But these retailers now are willing to take the chance because they understand, some of them understand what it is. And that's great because now the consumers can get that chance. And it's funny because we're about to pull some stuff off the menu that's a year and a half old. And I still have people messaging me, telling me how much they like it. But the stores don't want to see anything that was, you know, packaged more than 90 days. And if they knew that this shit was harvested in November of 24, they would lose their fucking minds. But people are, as of last week, still texting me, hey, that stuff is great. So it's kind of like, what, you know, who knows what are we talking about here? Let's compare, like, let's have an honest conversation. Like, what people say it is going to change over time, you know, and it's changing for me over time also.
Yep.
beautiful.
Hey guys, we have another Belgian guy here. His name is Sammy.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me.
Hey, you made it in, Sammy.
Yeah, Marcus. So I'm not so technical, but I made it in. So,
dude,
hi, everyone.
Beautiful. Well, welcome to you and Mojave as well, who also popped in right around the time that you popped in as well. A couple of narrow leaf drug cultivar growers right there.
Yeah, Sammy's actually one of the best I've known in my career. So I had the extreme pleasure of having him over at our last acceleration day in October, and you know,
it was very exciting, man. So thanks for having me, really, all of you. Welcome.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Sammy. Obviously, you're fond of the haze.
Well, yeah, I'm fond of the haze, but so I have to refer to it. I grow haze hybrids, so I don't do like Dom, like the full ones from Sam or David. But I was lucky to met a few people in the early 90s that kept some of the clone onlys from Neville, you know, and so we tried to preserve these special heirlooms because they stood out, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So from whenever I smoked the first A5 joint, so it's NL5s crossed to Haze A from Neville, I was a lover, enchanted, let's say. And so that was in 1993. And so then I got better acquainted with these people in the south of Holland. They were based in the south of Holland. Me too, by the way. And so it's a beautiful story, okay? And so we try to preserve Neville's legacy, let's say, but also David's legacy in a certain form, you know? And these plants are really special because it brings, to me at least, in a hybrid form, these two varieties, like say the more broadleaf dom, the Afghanis being NL5 or hash plant or G13, and interbreeding them with Haze A and C. Well, so it was a really unique expression that was derived from these crosses. And so, of course, we love the Haze, which means these are clones that will take 14 to 15 weeks to flower. You can maybe, in the best kind of way, grow them to up 16 and maybe even more. It depends also on how you cultivate them, etc., etc. But usually, I let them go 100 days flower. And just like Dom said, we hardly veg them. From a clone, we kind of veg them for maybe 10 days. Then I top them and I switch to flower, and then they start growing. So the first 4 to 6, 7 weeks, it's just all vegetable growth. And then, of course, from week 3, 4, the flowers start emerging. And then you have these monsters plant that, so it's not for the average cultivator, so to speak, And that's why it's always a niche market. But the product speaks for itself. And after all these years, they're still, being embraced by what I call the Haze crew here in Holland. And so it stretches far even to coffee shops. So they all appreciate my kind of work, and I'm thankful that I can do it, And so I keep the fire burning as long as I can. Simple.
Beautiful.
We had somebody in the chat saying no one grows Band-Aid Haze better than Sammy. So
thank you, man. That was also that. So
you're
isn't that Karma?
For you guys in America that sent it to me, Karma was involved in the production of the form of the Band-Aid Haze, which is the Cuban Black cross to A5, cross to Miracle Thai, quote unquote. But nobody actually knows if it's truly a Thai. Let's call it Miracle. And so that male A5 Miracle was really astounding, because it produced the Band-Aid Haze number 7. And if you know how to grow it, it blows your mind. So she can stand next to the old clones. And so I grow a lot of plants from seed. And so from my experience, it's hard to find that hybrid that, can stand next to these certain varieties. Of course, it's all selection and phenotypical expression that you're searching for. But so that's why we envy you guys in America and Canada, because you can really do large seed searches, like finding that extraordinary phenotypical expressions in lines, which is per usually between 5 and 10%. Okay, the rest will be. It could be that the rest contains more fire. It's the best weed, but we here also search for yield, expression, morphology, so it all comes together in its most beautiful form. You know what I mean? And that's what I mean with these extraordinary specimens that bind these two worlds of broadleaf dom with NLD, so not narrow leaf, to each other, and then you get these hybrids. Okay, but so I say we don't search for 9 weekers, 10 weekers, 11 weekers. So we are like 40, 100-day flower and more, and between that range, it's beautiful. And so the Band-Aid 7, really wonderful plant. Magnificent, powerful cultivar. And so I'm very thankful to have it.
Sounds beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit more about those sort of parent stocks, hazes, that you were talking about in regards to preserving Neville and David's work?
Well, so Neville, as you know, he scored 5 plants out of David's old seeds, being original Haze. And he did most of his work with Haze A and Haze C. And so these then tend to produce cultivars as C5 Haze, A5 Haze, Neville's Haze also, because it's the A5 cross to the Haze male C again. And then you get the Haze expressions within these lines that Neville actually preserved or selected from, and then passed 5 of his best expressions to these Southern Dutch people that embraced it. And they were also so they dialed these plants in. So they were able to achieve a cultivation methodology that was really high standing. And, so you could grow this plant to full potential. And so because when you don't grow it, cultivate it right, it tends to, produce hay, as we say, you know what I mean? And so it's mainly Haze A and Haze C. He also had a B female that absolutely blew their minds, but after 6 months of flowering, it still didn't end. And so it wasn't really the most practical plant to work with. That's why it also hasn't gotten preserved, you know what I mean? And for Haze A male, the same thing. Before Neville realized how beautiful I think it was, like the hybrid that came from it. Something happened with Haze, and it unfortunately died early in its early stages. So he then dialed in the best kind of expressions of Haze, which to him was Northern Light 5 Haze, and a certain phenotypical expression we call the number 2 was then used to create his crown of creation, let's say Neville's Haze, which is then this specific NL5 Haze A crossed to the full Haze C male. And so it's still around. And so it's really great, okay, that Neville's legacy also is embraced. And not only Neville, let's say David and Neville together, because I consider these two as the main people that were in. I think David really brought it to Holland, like he realized what it was. Neville then obtained it and he commercialized it by hybridizing it and spreading it around so more people could dial into Haze and Haze varieties, but hybridized. So it's like the first step up to full hazes. And I got to know a lot of people that are working full blood hazes. And so they're producing great work. But what they're all doing is like they're inbreeding original haze, let's face it, okay? That doesn't mean it's bad, because if you have large phenotypical expressions pollinating each other, you can keep the gene pool very rich and find these extraordinary plants. But having then plants that will be friendly to the cultivator, and you have to like 24 weeks to put 24, let's say more than a half year almost into this cultivation process, you want this plant to, produce some nice bud. Otherwise, you're wasting a half year of your life. You know what I mean? But it's a learning curve. It's a step by step. But so like Tom Hill, I think he's doing a magnificent job with his form of bringing original haze to the market. It's really outstanding. And he's not the only one. I think, there are a few not so big nameless people in this community that really, keep it real and bring the fire, which means like the best versions, phenotypical expressions in David and whoever were the Haze brothers, let's say, these guys form the cradle, right? And so from what I hear, it's mainly Colombian Dom crossed to probably some Mexican maybe related to it, and then Southeast Indian, either Thai or Laos or whatever comes from there, but so fire. And so interbreeding all these sativas in America and California back in Santa Cruz was really something that I didn't think that these people were actually aware of what they actually were creating. And so it took time to really, flow to people while they can smoke it, because what they did is bring the best equatorial land races together and, creates a hybrid from that, and that's what we call original haze. And then, it later spread to Holland, because Holland was the only country in the world back then that was friendly towards cannabis, and you can do some things here. That was also brought David to Holland. Neville came to Holland for other reasons, but he picked up on it. And being you are English native, so, the US and Australia, I think people that, came from abroad to Holland, which is a small country, were able to connect on deeper levels because, you have this English connotation. So you have English as your natal tongue, and Dutch people don't. And so there was a difference in, this international figures stepping in, because they did things that blew the Dutch people's head off, to be honest. And so we can only thank them, because this work is still like Dom does. He got the seeds straight from David by, I think, one of you guys here. Sorry if Caleb, I think it was, or another person. Ryan, yes, sorry. And so it's really important that we now have the ability also in Holland, in its first steps, experimental as of yet, to embrace this variety and put it where it belongs, because so in Holland, sometimes Cali strains that go 9 weeks, they reign here as the top price because it's the hype, right? It's simmering down. While people that are producing haze, they do 16 weeks and they get the half of the price what's rated for these Cali strains here in Holland. It's the world upside down in a way. And so within time, when this market matures, then I think the hazes will be better. And it's not about the money, but so when you can achieve, it's like a form of art, right? And so, or, like brewing wine, for instance, or, you have cheap wines, consumer wines, and then you have the really fine wines, that have a different quality, appreciation. It also takes longer. You have to bottle it away, and so patience comes with quality in this kind of sense, and I think that's that's missing in a lot of the cannabis industry or community's mind. that the best, also for commercial cultivars, they're usually chopped early, simple, because a 9-weeker you can let maybe go to 9 or 10. But so the homogeneousness and the industry and the investors, well, they want quick return on their investment. And so they all choose or have chosen mostly to have the easy varieties going that will have a quick reward. And now it's time, I think, to differentiate these two markets and also appreciate them for what they are. And so better quality then also be achieved, because when you have to work illegally, like I did many years, so you have to hide it, like the police can come, they take it away, pests can, crawl into your plants, and over time, it's a hassle to preserve them in mint condition, And so we've been doing it now for 40 years, and these plants are still around. And so I'm also very thankful, because it's not just by me. I have a collective here in the South that also embraces Haze for what it is. And it's by these people, all of them. And they do not search for spotlights. They only care for this, getting high. That's what it's all about. And that's what it's all about, man.
Dude, God bless you, Sammy. I loved everything you said. And I felt like it was beautiful because right as you really got into the Hayes brothers and Santa Cruz, Rob popped into the room. And I was like, well, Rob was there. He must have some words on this. Welcome, Rob. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
You look like you're in a jungle or something.
I kind of am, yeah.
Okay. You like outside on a deck or something? It's nighttime?
Yep. Yeah, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my God. Well, thanks for coming in and spending time with us, Rob. It's the Haze episode. We're talking about the narrow leaf drug cultivars, and Sammy just gave a nice little breakdown on sort of how it came to be from his perspective. You must have a perspective on that.
Well, yeah. I knew the Haze from Santa Cruz, of course, and I'd come across Haze a year or so before I met David. But that would have been, I met David in 77. So, yeah, I knew it from 75, I'd say.
That's early. That's early. I think I met the Haze in, oh gosh, it must have been the early 90s for me. Same as Sammy, probably around 92.
Yeah, we have the same age, man. We're from 73.
Yeah, we
so
are. 73. That's right, Sammy. That's awesome. That's awesome. You knew the Hayes brothers as well then, Rob?
I met Bob.
You met Bob.
Yeah, I never met Jerry, but and of course they didn't call themselves the Hayes brothers. That's they were just a couple of bros. But
a couple of bros bringing
brought
the
together
flower
by
in.
growing Haze. I first knew it not from in Santa Cruz really, but up on Skyline Ridge at a place called Pacific High, and that's where the very first Haze crop that I knew was grown in an old geodesic kind of broken down old geodesic dome. Pacific High was an alternative school, and I had a friend who alternative high school. I had a friend who went to school there. If you could call it school, it was more of an experience, I think, than a school. But
that's what school should be.
Yeah, it was good.
That's what school should be. So, but it kind of seems like the Haze is similar to the Mullumbimby madness for the story of, Mullumbimby, these guys were bringing in weed and they'd bring in weed and they get some seeds and then they'd cross that into it. And then they'd bring more weed in and get more seeds and then they'd cross that. Is that sort of what was going on with the Haze?
Well, yeah, it started as Colombian and Mexican,
right,
as far as you know, and that's what everybody was smoking. I mean, first Mexican was around, and then Colombian not long after that, and then more Mexicans and more Colombians. But and Thai got crossed in at the beginning too. Those were the three main things.
And would that have been Oaxacan, the Mexican, or would it have been somewhere else originally until it, like, I wonder the popularity of the regions and who, because I don't know. I went later, years later. I went to Oaxaca in the 90s as well. And it seemed like it was like they had acquired this sort of like we grow the best weed in Mexico vibe.
Well, there was Oaxaca and Michoacan. Those were the two places, the big names back in the day. Jalisco a bit, but yeah. Acapulco, of course, is right there too. It's just on the coast. It has the name, not really where the weed was grown, I don't think, but grown in the mountains of the same region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
Can
yeah,
I just add real quick, Marcus, that what Rob said is important, that because a lot of people, might miss that every year those crosses were being made from a population of seeds, not
right.
from a clone, not a selected clone made to make seed for sale, like happened in Holland. So through that whole arc of that whole period of haze coming online in California, every year it was a whole population of seeds, and next year it was a whole new one, and next year it was a whole new one. So like the continuity of haze after Amsterdam turned into selecting parent plants like Sammy was talking about. And that was where, whether it's bottlenecking, but the diversity of what haze was in the state of California or in Santa Cruz or something in those first 5 years versus what haze was after.
So,
It's
question
all
I have for
about the
both.
males, no matter what. I mean, yeah, the whole lineage. Every year there was another male, and that became half of the gene pool for the next year, the next Haze year. So, I mean, Haze is a brand. It wasn't a variety. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's definitely as Mo says, it's not done from the same plant, the same clone year after year as a parent. In fact, Neville didn't get seeds. Neville didn't get females. Neville got two males. That's how the original Haze line got to Neville. David gave him two males. And those males got crossed into Northern Lights and other things, like Sammy was mentioning, the NL5. That was the golden cross that Neville made. But it was crossed in with other things too. It was a male. It pollinated everything Neville had, I would assume. I mean, he was trying to bring it into his line, but it came through the male.
Such amazing information.
That's
And
what I
so,
heard.
Rob, I have a question, I guess, as the evolution of this, and you have a unique perspective because you've of course seen those males year after year be selected. Is there a vintage or a particular set of years that you're like, man, if we could just go back to these particular years, or did that not become a thing? Was it just like getting better every year?
Up to a point. I mean, it wasn't continually growing. I mean, to be honest, Bob and Jerry didn't continue growing Haze either. Once they met David and got skunk #1, that became their commercial weed. They stopped growing Haze too. That 76, the bicentennial year, was the year of the poster, right? So if you want to, that was probably really the culmination of Haze. And Haze is a bag seed. I mean, it was not intentionally made seed. Those are accidents. Some of the pollen that was intentionally brought in to make seeds for the next year also made very few seeds that were in people's bags. But yeah, it's not like breeding today. It's not,
Right.
yeah, or
Yeah.
seed today, whatever you want to call it.
If I
Yeah.
can have
And
a
so,
question for you, Rob. Sorry if I'm interrupting, but so Rob, you told me like so Sam or David gifted Neville two Haze males, right? But so Neville also had a Haze B. It was a female, all right, and he only grown it once because it was unpractical for him, And so the males were more practical to breed, like you say, on the top variety mother plants that he could obtain, such as the Northern Light 5s, G13, hash plant haze, right? But so from my story, and I could be discorrect or incorrect, so Neville did get seeds from David. That's his story, at least, and sprouted them. And from there came 5 plants, A, B, C, D, E, F, no, the E, 5 plants, right? And 3 of them were outstanding, being Haze A, C, and this female. But because of the impracticality of the female, he didn't want to, and he didn't have males, Neville. He had, like great females. So that's why he used the males to produce his famous NL5 hazes, right? But so David, and I know David and Neville weren't also agreeing on this story, right? And so to this day, we actually do not know if Neville really got seeds from David or it was clones. And so I ask you now, which was it?
As far as I know, David never gave him seeds. He could have later on. I drove to see Neville at what became Cannabis Castle later on, same house,
Yeah.
and took him two males grown from seeds that David brought from Santa Cruz. But David didn't give him a female. And if he didn't have seeds, then there's a gap in the story somehow. I mean, what you say about NL5
a lot of
and
speculation in this.
they were clones. They were some of the first cuttings I ever saw that made it across the Atlantic. And it had to be a male, of course, to start these lines. But Northern Lights, of course, was cuttings, and yeah, and several other things. Big Bud came as a cutting, and yeah. So
Good
the
to know.
male,
Good to know.
by default, ended up being, because there was Haze as a male, it got crossed in with a number of other clone-only females, as we'd call them these days.
Yeah, what we also received from the Southern Haze Collective, let's say, they were all females. Oh,
Rob, you're breaking the internet here today with these tidbits, shattering the great Haze myths, of which there's many.
oh too many.
Well, it's definitely legendary weed, but yeah.
So you brought him those two males? You drove those over to the Cannabis Castle?
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where Haze came from then? The female.
I have no idea. We can't ask Neville, but yeah, I have no idea. I
Eric
never
Gressel
saw
anymore.
any female that he had that
Okay.
was Haze.
Well, so I got it from the boys who gifted me these clones, and so I know from experience these people are also in their mid-70s by now, and so they wouldn't make up a story. But of course, they took it from Neville, right? And so there it gets a little blurry how he obtained these genetics. Let's say call it Haze. And so what is all about? I know that he and David were not on the same page regarding the story, so a lot of speculation still surrounds this mythology.
I would just tend to believe David's
Holland.
version, since he's the one who brought him to Holland in the first place, and definitely
that seems
the
logical.
two males part is 100% correct. I mean, yeah, I was there.
You're here right now telling us I would tend to believe what you have to say because you were there and you brought him those two males. To me, that part of it's done.
Without David, the Haze would have gone away to history. I mean, he recognized, like you said, when the Haze brothers, Jerry and Bob, started growing the skunk for their cash crop.
It's ironic that David's name is Sam the Skunk Man and not Sam the Haze Man.
Well, I'll tell you, he definitely.
It's ironic, right?
It is ironic. It absolutely is. And it's also ironic that his cut almost made it disappear. Like giving the Haze brothers the skunk #1 and turning it into their commercial crop.
What I mean, it's crazy.
It's amazing that he recognized. I mean, look, David was always, one thing we all know about David was he liked to get the most high. And so, of course, he's going to be a huge fan of the Haze because that high is
undeniable.
It's undeniable and it's different. And
David, as you know, having smoked with David so many times, he was a madman. He just hit bowl after bowl after bowl. And the thing that he loved about the Haze was that he said it would get him. He called it ceilingless, right? It would get him higher and higher with every hit. So yeah, without David, we wouldn't have the Haze. So
very true.
100.
We got some Pearl's original Haze, the two pearly phenotypes of the African Haze original Haze that we're smoking on right now.
Yeah, and it's as good as anything that I've smoked from Sammy's stuff or Band-Aid Haze. It's better than that. It's all long flowering sativa.
Awesome.
That's where the fire
16
is.
plus.
Yeah, they're like 18.
18 weeks.
Yeah.
That's where you find the really good introspective and soaring, kind of highs, I think.
Almost trippy.
And after 57 years of daily smoking, or 58 now, this is still as good as anything I was smoking back in the day. And I smoked some really good weed back in the day.
I would say out of our harvest, and I don't know, you might have even seen those, Rob, but the one that he's smoking has been his favorite throughout the whole entire harvest. Like the first time I brought it to him, he was like, wow, he's like, that one's special. And it's the one that he keeps going back to time
Yeah,
after
it's a
time.
good one. The African Haze, original Haze.
Yeah. Sounds good. I wish I had it here.
Yeah. The African Haze, I got the sample in New York, and it's really outstanding. Yeah.
Why don't you guys go through some of those pictures, Dave, while we're talking about these? I feel like my mouth needs to water.
What's
So
the
go to
what's the African side of African Haze? I didn't have a
Nigerian, I believe, but I'm not sure.
It's
Malawi.
Nigerian and
I thought it was Malawi from
what?
A Seeds. It
No.
was their Malawi
Yeah,
township.
it's the
Mm.
doctor's Malawi.
Oh.
Doctor's
it's
Malawi,
Malawi.
which I've grown also. I've grown that Malawi cut from the doctor, and it's a great cut, but it really amped up the other side of the Nigerian, I think.
That's
Well,
it. So it's a cross between Nigerian and Malawi then.
What's that?
African. It's a cross between Malawi and Nigerian. The
And
African Haze,
Nigerian,
I mean.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know.
Well, you know the
Marcus, you need. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dave. No, I was
I
going
was
to say that.
Marcus, you need to enable me to share pictures.
Ooh, sorry. Go ahead, Mojave. I'll work on this.
No, I was going to say that the sage that you guys, the Big Sur holy weed cut that you guys grow as well. The thing, I mean, that it's interesting that the thing that makes that plant special is Haze and Malawi, right? And everything else about the architecture and everything is the compromise, right? Like we were talking
Right.
about, there's always a compromise in terms of like production. And I think there is a sweet spot where in that 12 to 14 week range where you can get the market, what the market wants, what everybody wants, what the trimmer wants, and then impart the chemistry that you want in there and still pull it over. But it is a compromise, right? And that's a perfect example because I love that African haze. To me, is like it's almost you can get uncomfortably high on that because it's got the soar of the haze and the intensity of that Malawi, that sweaty palm, like almost panic attack feeling, and it's so intense. And then
I love it.
yeah, that's
It
phenomenal.
rips you apart.
Yeah.
I could tell you
Absolutely.
the history of weed because I started in '68 and I saw, I moved to Humboldt in the late '70s, saw indica come in. When I started in the '60s and early '70s, I was growing just long flowering varieties because that's all I had the seeds from that were coming in, and I knew a group of dealers that were bringing it in, and so I had a hell of a collection of seeds, and I knew what really good weed was, and I knew what just swaggy regular weed was. And everybody back then was trying to cross Mexicans to Colombians to shorten it so that it would finish in time in the California climate. When I moved to Humboldt, I saw indica come in for the first time, and I knew exactly where the market was going to go because it was big, thick, fat buds, super greasy. You cross that to a sativa, you're going to get something incredible every time. And that's what people did. And it would finish in time and it would make nice buds and it would produce. And so that's what the market was going to go for. It's the same thing happened in Jamaica because I've been over there several times and I saw it go from being really good long flowering varieties to as fast as they could grow it and so they could sell it and make some money. And I'm trying to bring the market back to appreciating the long flowering varieties that most people have never experienced. And when they're done properly, they can take you for a ride that's more pleasurable than anything you've ever felt. And,
Well, I think that's what the haze is
and
about,
that's
right?
why I want everybody else
That
to
that's what the
feel
haze
it.
is about. It's about the
Dave
pursuit
deuced him to it. It took a while, but
I just got a black screen. I don't know why it's not sharing. Does anyone? Oh, there it is. There we go.
I
Little
think that's what
photographs.
haze is about, though, right? It's about the quality over the production. You got I always call them smokers plants versus growers plants. The growers plants, it's all based in economics and, like you said, getting the crop off. But a lot of the smokers don't really care about that stuff. They just want the best. And I think that's what Haze really
Right.
represents, right? Is that pursuit of the finest.
It's a labor of love.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It
Well,
truly is a labor of love. It's like you.
I've always
Oh, go
It's an
ahead.
art
done,
form.
I've grown commercial too. So I had to grow yeah, I always grew for myself. I always grew the long flowering.
Makes sense.
Heck.
well, you know what? I got to share a quick story. Like I'm 56, Tony, but I've been smoking weed for well over 50 years. And my first time smoking haze was in 1975 in Hollywood, purple haze out in front of our house, grown in Big Sur or Santa Cruz, I'm not sure. But as a kid, it was all, everything we ever saw was narrow leaf and late flowering, right? It was all. And my dad used to
Right.
smuggle weed into California. There wasn't a lot of production going on, but there was just a lot of occasional plants being grown in people's backyards and stuff, but they were all narrow leaf. And I remember, and my brother moved back up to Big Sur in 79, and he was growing up there, or 78. And so all the weed that we were smoking in LA was coming from Big Sur. And then one year it was 83, I think it was Christmas of 1983. And every year my brother would give us a little jar of weed. And he gives us all a little jar of weed and we smoke it. And I turn to my other brother, I've got four older brothers, and I say, "Hey, what's different about the weed this year?" And he leans in and he goes, "He crossed it with indica." Like, like this was the year that they crossed everything, everyone, right? And then from that point on, like it was gone. But the point that I'm making is that even a kid, I was 13, even a kid was like, "Hey man, how come the weed's different?" And the response that everyone had was the same that you just gave, which is it was driven by it was a commercial decision, not a decision about how you want to feel. The people, all the
Right.
growers saying like, "Hey, I want to feel different. Let's grow different types of weed so we can feel different because people want to smoke weed that makes them feel different." They're saying, "No, man, I don't want to get busted. I want it to not mold. I want to, get it done before the rains come. I want to be able to grow it in my backyard where it doesn't grow over the garage. I want to grow it in my basement." All these decisions. And the big part of this, I think, is important is that transition was rapid, right? Because it was a seed world back then. The pollen was flying through the air. But the decisions to make the chemistry of the plants before that event was a long path of human relationship with cannabis all over the world. So people were making the selection for how they wanted to feel, and this is the weed that came from this region. This is how they wanted it to feel there. And this is the weed that came from, that's how they wanted to feel there. And then all of a sudden it was like, I need to make some money. I don't want to get busted. So the
Yeah, but
whole,
the illegality is also in play here.
well, it's
The
Yeah.
all about the
illegal,
There was
illegality. It's
resistance
that
all along
pressured
the
on it.
way.
And that
a
made people
prohibition,
also go for shorter, quicker because
right?
they're afraid, right? And
That's
that's
my
also
point.
the
So,
So
synergy.
many things
So it fucked it
influence
up.
a long flowering grow. You
right.
can't,
Absolutely.
I mean, back in the day, it had to be outdoors. There was no indoors back then. There was no clones. You had to try and get it to finish on time. And the Mexicans, some of them would finish on time. The Colombian, I've grew a lot of Colombian and it never finished. So, but the weed that it came from was some of the best weed I've ever smoked in my life.
Well, it had
So
a lot to do with. It also had a lot to do with where the weed was being grown, right? Like back then,
right.
it was
And,
being grown in Colombia. So, it,
conditions matter.
yeah, and these loose flower
Yeah, it
types,
matters.
the loose flower types, that's really the only way that you can get away. You can't take indica down to the tropics and grow it, right? It just turns to mold. It turns to mush.
Right.
And part of that is resistance in the flower, but part of it is flower structure as well, right? So that loose
Yeah.
flower phenotype and the thin leaves it's really about the people that were selecting the plants in that given environment, right? And the environment definitely played its role in shaping the way that haze and what I call equatorials are all
Yes.
about.
Haze didn't grow outside in
Right.
Santa Cruz either. Haze grew in a greenhouse. It was always a daughter of the greenhouse. It never would
Otherwise,
never
it
would
wouldn't
taken
survive.
in
Yeah.
Santa Cruz outdoors.
Yeah, in
That's
California.
my dream is to grow haze in Santa Cruz. Anybody that can make that happen. Like, somebody else said Santa Cruz about something else. I mean, Santa Cruz is like, there's something magical about things that are produced in Santa Cruz. Like,
Climate.
yeah, but I think there's also the type of people that gravitate towards there,
Yeah.
understand how to, utilize these awesome things that Santa Cruz has, like the climate, the laxed laws, just the acceptability, all the food that's down there. I mean, there's just so many awesome things and people and just high quality stuff. When I lived there, it was like people were really into the good stuff, not just weed, good music. And
You should talk to
I
Stuart.
think, yeah, and all
Talk
that
to
stuff, I feel
Stuart
like,
from
That's
Hayes
true.
Valley.
It goes hand in hand.
Hayes Valley Nursery.
yeah,
Talk to
yeah,
those guys.
the music, the weed, and the food.
The lifestyle.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
me, it
And
was
I feel
always
like
a
the
mix
haze,
of the best of Southern California with the best of Northern California. It's right in the middle there.
yeah,
The same thing could happen in Santa Barbara. The weather's even better. But at the University of California campuses, are both towns. But yeah, it was just a blending of the minds, and people who got out of LA and moved north, and people who lived in the Bay Area. I mean, Northern California weighed in just slightly later, the whole Humboldt phenomenon. It was beginning then, but they started doing the way to the growing, and that was just because they were more remote. It's easier to get away with it in Humboldt than it was in Santa Cruz. So
yeah.
Yep.
we had the Santa Cruz Mountains. We had the mountains right on the ocean. It's Big Sur just to the north. It's the same kind of environment.
It's a California coast, man, from one end to the other. I think you can't get much better in the United States for a growing environment like the California. I grew the pearls outdoors in McKinleyville, which is 2 miles from the coast, and it finished. It grew fine. So it's because of its disease resistance, it's able to grow outdoors in a very moist, mold climate or a mold-inducing climate where other plants just turn to mush. That one was still growing because it's so open and resistant to PM and botrytis.
Mhm.
Santa
What
Cruz has
about
got
Florida? What
palm
about
trees and
Florida in
redwoods.
America? Why are you
Yeah.
not growing in Florida?
Yeah, well, Florida, they grow in Florida, but that's a whole nother story. Florida should be the place where they grow all the equatorial weed and sell it
Right.
all over the U.S., but unfortunately you can't. But the whole palm trees and redwoods thing of Santa Cruz is really a great metaphor for what it was. Rob really said it. San Francisco and L.A., like they met in between. The redwoods crept all the way down, the palm trees crept all the way up, and it stopped right there in Santa Cruz. The palms don't grow well further north, and the redwoods don't grow well
I
further
grew palms in McKinleyville. I had palms everywhere, all kinds of palms. I love palm trees almost as much as I love weed.
He does.
And
We should
all to
talk
seed.
sometime in the daytime. All you see behind me in the darkness, it's all palms. We got 4 or 5
Nice.
parlor palm species and a coconut and a beetle palm, and they're all here. Areca palm, but yeah, they're all
Plants.
here.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, up in
Palm and
Humboldt,
bamboo.
you can grow all the species of Trachycarpus. And I had palms from Colombia, high elevations in Colombia and Thailand, Vietnam. I had all kinds of palm trees.
Was it a palm tree, Rob, that David brought those insane seeds back home from, like, I don't know, the Seychelles?
Seychelles of Coco de Mer.
Yeah, coconut
Coco
man.
de
Oh, the Coco
Mer.
de Mer, the big giant one.
Dude, he just comes
Yeah.
out of his room with these seeds. It's like, check this out. I'm like, what the? Yeah. Had filled the trunk of my car up, he says. Yeah, I filled the trunk of the rental car up. I'm like, you are a fucking madman, dude.
But he knew how
Yeah,
to
those are rare seeds. They're cool looking
Yeah.
seeds.
he
They're
knew how
huge.
to
They're the
navigate the
largest
whole
seed
world
of any
of
plant.
That's what he told me.
yeah, the tap roots are like 6 feet long or whatever. He had the know-how and the knowledge to navigate the whole phytosanitary
Exactly.
certificate thing from the Seychelles, and he got a whole bunch of them over to Hawaii.
That's right. And they're growing in Hawaii, but he also had seeds in Amsterdam.
He did also, yeah, he did. It's funny. I just got a
That's right.
message from Diana, and she just tested out there. She grew some haze plants, David always grew a few plants in the window at the apartment in Amsterdam. So when I was over there, she said, I should grow some stuff, and I said, well, why don't you grow some haze? I know that it's like hard to get it through flowering, but she flowered them out, and she was saying how crappy they looked, and she just tested some out. A friend of hers is in need of some. So she's got a convulsive disorder. She's shaking a lot with her hand, and so she asked me about THC, and I said, well, maybe you could give her some of the haze flower. And so I guess she just ripped some out, smoked a joint, and she said she's whacked out. She's ripped. So the haze is still doing its thing over on in Amsterdam.
Yes,
The
and it's
wonderful
very
family.
medicinal, like you say. It has medicinal properties for patients, certain, like epilepsy and everything. So this plant's really good, okay? It's really good.
It is.
It makes you feel great. It would be an interesting plant to break into the commercial marketplace and sort of slowly remove people from the cheapest price, highest THC, right? Because the hazes don't really follow that same model. They often have a lower percent of THC. Do you guys see that, or are you seeing them as higher?
Yeah, how did
No,
that taste test out for Dominic? Did you get any lab results from that pack or the terpene
yeah,
test too?
yeah. So we've done some intermittent testing, and they check out around 12 to 22%. So not super low, not super high. But for the terp profile, so I have them in the vault right now. So probably gonna get them out in April-ish to test them fully on terpenes after everything has developed a little bit more. So we'll see. But
What about, do you also, Dom, do you also test on flavonoids and things like that and other chemical compounds that are in
no,
the weed?
no, terpenes
Because
and
that would be
cannabinoids.
interesting.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
The way that the labs here work is, yeah, they can develop any test or they can test for basically anything, but there's no demand. Like tiles,
Okay.
for example, something that we should be testing for, but
Hmm.
commercial growers here in Europe are not really
Yeah, it's step by
interested.
step. I know.
No,
We're
no,
awakening all
exactly,
of them. It's
Well,
good.
exactly.
it's an extra methodology because
Yeah,
you're targeting a very small section of the chemicals in a gas chromatograph run. They
yep,
do something called
Absolutely.
a hard
yep.
cut. So they essentially divert like a very specific section of the flow through the column to a sub column
Of the
to really
molecules,
separate.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so
Hmm.
you need to when you're doing those kind of non-standard chemicals, you have to develop an assay, and
Yep.
to do that for one client, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
I mean,
And
I,
it's
I asked
pricey.
them, but
Price.
I'm not paying for the development of that if
That's
I'm the
it.
only one who's gonna use that.
Yeah, that's
So,
it.
but I have had the hazes set off to the genetics lab, so we'll see what marker information is to be found in those. Um, but the population that I got from you, Ryan, was super diverse, eh? It
Yeah,
was incredible. I had super early flowering males and profusely flowering, I might add, and I had never gonna finish plants, so and everything in between.
yeah,
But it was a real joy growing them. Absolutely.
yeah. Those indeterminate flower types, I think that's probably what Neville ran into, where he
Oof.
just decided they weren't worth his time, or it wasn't commercially viable. And he didn't even
That's it.
he didn't
Yes.
keep cuttings, and by the time he smoked the product, the
Yeah.
plant was long dead. Um, yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because online there's this idea that Hayes is a three-way hybrid with Colombians, but I knew from David that that the Hayes brothers Rob and Jerry or Robert and Jerry were always crossing in that next thing that they liked. Right? They'd find like a Thai or they'd find like a really good Mexican or whatever it was, and it would get crossed into the Hayes. And so I always saw Hayes as like this kind of ever evolving family.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which generations or kind of which line those seeds from David came from. I know he has a whole bunch of different kind of diverse ones at in the Horta Farm collection, but
Well,
yeah, I think that diversity, Dom, that you speak of, really makes sense. Knowing what we do about the kind of that family generational breeding approach that the
Yeah.
Hayes brothers took.
Yeah, so having grown like the Colombian like 20 years ago, um, just last year before we did the hazes, we finished Kerala, an Indian one. And so what I could see from the hazies that you gave me, Ryan, was there were some phenotypes had very like tile leaning properties in terms of flower architecture, in terms of smell, and there was one that was had a different flower shape, but it had you could smell like the Kerala in it. I could kind of compare. Of course, it's from different eras, but I could kind of compare the profiles and how the plant grows to these um, like more or less original type plants. You know,
Well,
um,
the last male to be crossed in, as far as I know, this is information
yeah.
from David, but the last male that Bob crossed in was Kerala.
Mm,
See, that David had brought back and gave to him, and the year before that was Ty. So,
yeah.
I mean, that means if it started out as a Mexican Colombian, then the
Mm,
next year it was half Thai and only half Mexican Colombian. Then the
yep.
next year it was half
Yeah.
Kerala and only, an eighth Mexican and an eighth Thai.
So it's a
So
polyhybrid.
yeah, and but it's diluted every time by the male. And
So
and but you never
Yeah.
see the male expression only comes through in the female offspring. So
Is
it's
that why
it's
Neville's Haze A and C were so special? Because they came from an early, like sequence of the original haze, you think?
yeah, yeah.
let me see. Um, like this was the Indian. You guys see this picture?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to highlight like for the viewers and listeners like the extreme diversity of cannabis of like drug type cannabis, and I'm sure Rob you can attest to that more than I can, but from a visual point of view, on the left hand side we have a Afghanica leaning hybrid, a modern hybrid. The one on the left in the middle is a indica leaning hybrid. So what the populace still thinks is sativa dominant. Then the third plant is like more like a commercial haze, like an Arians haze. And the plant on the right, that's the landrace Kerala.
Wow.
Mm.
And so all these plants were planted at exactly the same time in exactly the same conditions, like straight to flower, so no veg time whatsoever. And you see the difference in plant architecture and in amount of flower sites,
Morphology,
right?
enormous.
So you could harvest the far right one, the Indian one. You could do like 2 harvests a year, maybe three if you're fast enough. Whilst the one on the far left, you can do 6 to 7 harvests a year.
Mm.
And the way that the far right one makes up is by going in the height. And this is what I was talking about by growing them slightly different, right? So with the far left, you want to have a dense canopy, maybe veg them somewhat. But on the right, it's a different situation. So this was that Kerala,
Oh,
so growing in
beautiful
a
plant.
greenhouse. Yeah, and so well, what I talked about earlier is that like they shed their fan leaves quite fast. So the last couple of weeks is pretty much without any
Mhm,
fan leaves.
mhm.
Again,
Beautiful.
really nice flowers. So when harvest time is around the corner, it's all flowers on a branch, on a stake.
And how long did it flower, Dominic, this one?
That one was 116 days or
It's
100.
reasonable, eh? What a monstrous plant. Beautiful. It's
Yeah,
pure
Great.
Kerala,
I
this
love
one.
it.
yeah,
That's no veg,
So
Dom.
what's the
yeah.
fragrance?
This I don't do any veg, never, not
So when
clones,
you
Wow,
not
when you say a number of days, you
exceptional.
mean from seed.
yeah, from seed, yeah, correct, correct.
Wow. So what's the
Uh,
fragrance of this one, Dominic? Can you
what
elaborate? The
what
fragrance, the aromatypic, the terpene profile.
this one
Yeah,
from the Corral, you mean?
yeah.
Um, Herbal, little mangoish, but with a, a funk and a dank in it. Very complex, hard to explain. Not
But
super
it's dark.
intensive.
It's sweet darky, like say.
Yeah, I
Looks
still have
great, man.
some
Props
lying
for that.
in the fridge. So this was, I think this, I have to download the other pictures
Great.
from the haze. So this
Fantastic.
Dom,
is
we
a
should get
harvest
you.
timer.
We should be able to get you access to sending some of your samples to a Canadian laboratory that
Yeah,
might
sure,
have more volatiles.
sure.
Because this wouldn't be a recreational shipment; it would be a scientific
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah, for
Yeah,
scientific
sure.
yeah, yeah.
investigation. So it's
Mhm.
permitted under the regs.
Here, for example,
Thank God for that.
we have a Thai plant that we grew the year before we grew the hazes. This is the harvest of one Honduras
Wow.
landrace.
Wow. Also beautiful.
So came out at 3 kilograms, branches on a bud.
So it's more just to kind of help people understand. Your vertical system is kind of what I called like a vertical scrog,
Yeah,
right? It's
exactly.
like a screen of green. It's
Here we
kind of. You're
go.
not really weaving the plants too much, but it's really
This is
vertical setup.
Malawi.
Do you
It's a
have any?
smart
Do you have
setup.
any of the pictures that
Smart.
show like the length or the width of the plant in your
Yeah, yeah,
system?
yeah.
Nice.
I'm
Yeah,
looking through them. Um,
there you go.
so here, for
Beautiful.
example, what you see on the picture is that's one plant, right? So
Yeah, I saw that.
So
Great.
home growers could do this in a small room with like the new LED style kind of stuck to the wall, right?
this was one of the earlier setups where we selected from a population of AG13 back cross with Colombian. We selected a research genetic that we can use in our trials. So we had to like select based on flowering time. And this is our 50 day quote unquote haze that we have. And this was one of the first plants where we did the intercanopy lighting trial with. So these are all clones, no veg from clone. And it's when we had back these results, these plants that we, went farther. So in this setup, we had 50% top light, 50% on the intercanopy in terms of wattage.
Wow.
This is an interesting one. This is a one from Papua New Guinea. So I had a seed batch from 1979 from Papua New Guinea that was passed down to me by a collector back in the day. So it spent like almost 20 years in my freezer. I had about 120 seeds of it left, and it took about 14 days for one to pop up, which was just basically a runt. But we managed to flower it. It was like 18 weeks, and it had these like baseball bat
That's
shape.
a little bit AG13 structure wise. Very
Yeah,
similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
That exactly reminds me of that structure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Beautiful
but
plants.
very well. What was interesting about this plant is the regularity of the internodal distance
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
found striking on this
Great
plant.
structure. Yeah, great structure.
This is some other. I'm gonna quickly download the other pictures, Ryan, from the haze so you can see them full up.
Beautiful.
So
Man, I enjoyed looking at all those plants. It's
Me
exciting
too.
for me to A, be smoking again, flower, B, only gonna smoke haze, and C, having a haze plant right here that I can just start growing right away. I can start, and I know all of these amazing people with amazing cuts of different plants. It doesn't seem to follow the same sort of fear and scarcity vibe that the other sort of marketplace does, where it's like don't share things, make sure you keep everything to yourself, make sure you, it's like this is a different kind of scene, this haze scene, where it's like, wow, if you don't share it, it is gone. Got to
yeah,
keep it alive.
Yeah, absolutely
yep.
that. It's friends, eh? It's
I
it's a
really like
friend
seeing
circle. It's
the
not commercial.
landrace diversity you just clicked through. That's fantastic to me. See
Right?
all
Beautiful.
There's
all
something.
the different stuff. I mean, so many grows you go to. Okay, if you walk up and squeeze them, they smell different, but it's just
Not like
same,
that.
but a little bit different. But that's just obviously you're not smelling them, you're not smoking them, you're just looking at them and go, wow, look at all that diversity. That's amazing.
Yeah, totally. It
Yeah, well,
makes
I
you
think
really want to smell the plants.
there's a lesson in there too. I mean, those 16 seeds that I gave Dom, how many females did you get from that, Dom? 8?
No, no,
9?
no, no, a lot more. David used to jokingly say it's about 60 to
He did.
70%
He did.
are
Yeah.
females, and that's exactly what I had. So
That's
I still keep
interesting.
a few males. I lost a really really early one, but I did open pollination with all the females that I had with the very early ones. So I do have some second generation seeds of those. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
to my point
Great
though,
work,
like
Dom.
even in those
Great
10
work.
seeds, even in those 10 seeds, you had a huge amount of diversity,
super. Every plant was different, Ryan.
right?
Every single plant was different.
Well, that's my point. Like when you're talking about, like Marcus, when you're talking about your seeds there, that plant came from a reproduction of Positronics Haze, which was a reproduction of David's work, right? Of David's seeds. So you're already 3 generations removed. And at this point in time, like like even what we said earlier, Haze isn't one thing. It's a whole
No.
series of things that were like Colombian repeatedly diluted by 2 different or multiple different land or other pollen donors, right? So it's really like Haze is like an umbrella term that represents these multi equatorial hybrids,
Yeah.
right? And so even within Dom's like 16 seeds, call it 10 females, you have a serious amount of diversity and therefore ability for any given breeder to come along and like change the line based on the bottleneck and the founder event that is represented in those few seeds that they get,
Yep.
right? So like Mark, the Marcus the Haze that you're growing is arguably very different from like what Dominic's growing. Yet we all call them Haze,
Well,
right?
I think every seed that Dom cracked was different from the
Yep.
Exactly.
same batch
Right.
of seeds. Yeah, of course.
Right. And
That's
then yours
so we
is
said it earlier. It's the same way in Jamaica they call it the lamb's bread. But it's just that there's no single lamb's bread there, and I don't think there was ever a single Mullumbimby madness. It was just this sort of like name that
Plan.
a certain area got that was like, and so I'd always just, you just try to find those kind of unique flavor profiles that sort of hit that nostalgic box for, but you're right, there's an endless amount of variety in it, from frankincense to myrrh to
well, and
camphor to
like we learned on the breeding, that breeding talk a few weeks ago, you can have a huge difference in the direction of a project just based on your own personal plant selection and also numbers. Like if you're growing just a few plants, like you're kind of limited to what you get, right? And so, you know, Arion's haze versus some other haze, somebody else's reproduction, they're all really different things. Is kind of my
I
point.
remember
That's
he
also
had.
the beauty about it, that everybody can do his own thing and, build his own kind of, personal preference line.
Yeah, well,
Because
within
the
genetic
genet,
diversity, you
yes,
have the
that's what I
opportunity.
mean.
Yeah, within genetic diversity, you have the opportunity for finding those interesting recombinant plants.
That's it. And that's why I always say, like, instead of competing with each other, you should appreciate the variation that is, within this gene pool, because everybody can do his own fragrance, so to speak, like perfume or whatever. Okay. Really great stuff.
I mean, for me, the work competition in in like a plant breeding context is it's just such a dichotomy, right? Like it's a mentality that's like to me is really born out of like motorsports.
Yeah.
I got a
Yeah.
bigger
True.
engine than you do.
But you don't think it's a part of
Exactly.
plants and breeding? Like how many apples succeeded? How many bananas succeeded? How many, like it's not a competition?
Yeah, but that doesn't
No, it's
mean that the
not because
commercial apples are
that's
better
not
than
the
the homegrown and the garden
No,
zero.
no,
Okay.
I just mean competition for success. If
No,
winning is
well, then it
numbers,
becomes something different. Then it becomes not about the flavor. Then
yeah.
it
Well,
becomes
no, it
about the
becomes a
numbers and money.
styrofoam apple from
It
Safeway, or
becomes, yes, it
or the
becomes a
styrofoam
product.
tomato, right? Not the same as a an heirloom tomato that tastes incredible and has expressed all these flavor profiles. But
you got to remember when Darwin said survival of the fittest, he didn't mean the biggest guy that could run the fastest or
no,
The
could endure the
smartest,
longest.
the most
Survival of the
successful
the most
fittest.
numbers.
adaptable. Yes.
Fitness meant fecundity. So fecundity is like your ability to leave offspring. So
To be
technically,
flexible.
like the redneck dude in the trailer park with 10 kids has higher fitness than the guy running the marathons with no kids.
And And
right?
on the apple thing, so in nature, the apples is survival of the fittest, but in commerce, the apples are survival of the clone.
Right. There you go.
Because so if you go back
Because the
into
apple does fall far from the tree.
very, very far, exactly. So in nature, it is still competing with the general, just as Ryan mentioned, but in the market, and I think that's important for cannabis as well, is that in that haze population, it wasn't about selecting one plant to be mass reproduced. It was a group of people selecting, maybe Rob, you could actually maybe speak to this, but haze, I mean, haze describes in a sense the effect. It's like, man, you smoke this weed, you're going to go off into a haze. You're going to feel this lifty, floaty feeling. And as long as everyone was making those selections for that effect, then whether it was Thai, Colombian, Indian or not, you still had the line still represented something of what haze was meant to be, as opposed to just crossing it with an Afghani and then calling it haze. Like a lot of the hazes out there today are heavily influenced by their hybrid hazes.
Yeah, well,
So
terpenylene is dominant, right? Terpenylene dominance is dominant over every other terpene profile, more or less.
There are two things you see that really come through. You have the terpenoline dominance in the aroma, but you also have the laddery flower structure, the open structure. So it's like a ladder, a chain.
Yep.
And you see that, you look at Katsu Haze. Katsu Haze is not particularly terpenoline-y. Katsu is a coffee shop in the Netherlands, okay? And they have their signature variety there, only one they put their name on, is Katsu Haze. They also have Amnesia Haze. That's one that came, I believe, from the Soma side. And those are their two most expensive because they're the longest and hardest to produce, and also the most special things that they market. But you still see that laddery effect in the Katsu Haze. It's a fairly dense bud overall, but each little branchlet within the flower is a ladder, and that's one trait that really comes through in them, and that and the terpenoline. Otherwise, they could be pretty much all over the map. The important thing is the absence of Afghan. That's really the important thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the thing, like I was saying earlier with the diversity. Like Dom, you crossed all the females to the male, right? But you're going to lose any recessive traits.
Yep.
That are coming out. So,
that's why I took
always
cuttings.
say like the population open pollination or using some males.
That's a great example right there.
Is a good step, but like you still have the ability to reverse those special plants and make some selves. And I would argue that those seeds are like more valuable for breeding than and I know given the context of your topic about the high percentage of intersex plants in the feminized crosses, there's a debate there, I guess, to be had. But
yeah,
I do think though that when you start making more of your own seeds and you're growing other people's seeds less, that you'll see less incidence of intersex, right? Like,
yep.
My point in that conversation was really about like intersexuality isn't really about the way the seeds were made. It was about the parents that were used to make the seeds
and how they were cultivated.
Yeah. Those
okay,
ones.
So you ready for some haze pictures?
Yeah.
Dude, are you kidding me? I've been loving these pictures.
Look at the resin on that last one. Can you go back one, Don?
Well, that one.
Resin on the leaves. Like when the flowers are so immature, that's a lot of resin on those leaves.
Yeah, that's a Laos phenotype.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so currently we're doing a cool experiment with our Laos, seeing if we can reduce the flowering time by a week or two. So keep your eyes open for that one.
By the way you cultivate it, you mean, Dom?
Yeah.
Giving it positive stress, let's say.
Yeah, well,
flower as early as possible. Okay.
I'm not gonna spoil anything yet. So this, for example, is
I won't
secret
ask you
of the chef.
Here's the vertical scrog. You can see. Well, how would you say how many meters or centimeters deep is that canopy from the frame, like from the trellis?
That's about 40 centimeters, so well over a foot on each side.
Yeah, not that much over a foot though. Maybe like 14 inches.
15 inches. Here you see it better. Some branches tend
like
to.
the beer bottle.
really grow out. So this plant, you'll see it from the side soon enough, but this is from the head of the table, so you kind of see where we had the lighting set up. And by that point, I already lowered the lighting because I was gonna harvest it.
Right.
And so this is the plant.
Dom, can I ask one question there? Light to light? What's the depth of light from either side?
40 centimeters.
Oh, so but it was 80 from light to light.
Yeah, 80 from light to light. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
almost a meter.
Almost a meter space in between the lights. Yeah. But if you look at that, like that's one plant. And we try to bend it down so not to have it overly, growing past the lights. But we had several phenotypes, several plants that did grow beyond the top lights even. So that was pretty crazy.
Were
And so,
these straight to seed to flower or no?
yeah.
Really? That was planted under 1212.
Yeah. No, well, actually
Jesus.
under 11 and a half. You know what you kind of need to with those type of plans. But yeah,
Have you
so
tried these from clone after running from seed? Were you able to make
not yet,
clones?
but I'm planning to, depending on how well our allows experiment is going to work. But I think we're in for some cool stuff in the coming months.
Oh, I know what you're
I'm
doing.
curious to see.
Yeah,
That's
great
great.
work, Don. Really great
So you
work.
have like look at the flowers. Look at the
Yeah,
flower structure.
it's
They're
undeniable.
the ones on the top are the same structure as the ones on the bottom. So here we have two plants
Huh.
that yielded about 2 kilograms dry weight of flowers each.
How many weeks?
It was 165 days.
It's
Actually, one was 164 because it took me an entire day to pull it down.
and the pot is quite small actually.
It's
Amazing work, man.
18 liters, so it's like 3.5 gallons.
Wow. Really
And
great
so
work, man.
Look at that.
when we take it down
That's
from the net, the thing just bends over,
It just
right?
flops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resting
But
giant.
I want to get some of that floppy haze.
dude,
Oh,
I mean, was like it was a pretty
You
heavy
know
one
it, Babs?
to hold up. But yeah, so I mean, is it commercially viable? I think so, right? It's just as Dave and Tony said, you need to present it in a different way. But in terms of biomass yield, commercial biomass yield,
Amazing. It's the most commercial there is. That's it.
I mean, you can fetch a higher price for it because it's so rare, et cetera, et cetera. But for like processing, it says nearly no fan leaves left on it, so quick processing. That's a second generation fake. So what I do want to show you guys is two different graphs, temperature and relative humidity. So here we have a temperature and relative humidity logger inside the canopy. This is normal top-down lighting, right? So when we look at the graph, the top graph, the blue one, we see that it has a reach of a little over 93% relative humidity during the night, and it drops down to about 75 during the day. So the temperature is relatively smooth, but what happens when you introduce intercanopy lights inside a canopy, you create heat. And that heat makes it so that your microclimate, in terms of humidity, is much better managed. So you have less swings. Overall relative humidity is a lot lower, a lot more stable. Depending on where you measure, of course, you're going to have a little bit more temperature spikes, but still we're talking about a couple of degrees Celsius. But I just wanted to show this in terms of
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's
so
really
with
neat.
normal
Yeah, that's what
with
we
the
need.
canopy.
And exact.
So I think
Good
like growing
research.
this style with covering the light that a plant like Haze or other, long flowering, high stretchy cultivars have, I think adjusting your lights to get the same light distribution overall
But
on the
so
plant.
Dominic, can you grow this in greenhouses with light deprivation in our summertime, right? And so you
Yeah,
take like from May, so that would be brilliant because then you have some terps, okay.
exactly, exactly. So,
Beautiful.
but that's all up for discussion. I do know we have tested this with the Haze, as you see here, but we've also done the Laos, which gave amazing results. Pearl types we've done in this system, which is great. You know, the Malawi we've done, the Honduras. So I'm trying to see the Laos. Where
You
is
know,
it?
the other thing that we should mention, because it's a Haze show, is the idea of flowering clones, like Colin was saying, and even I've got I was talking with Dom earlier about rooting clones. Like we used to do this with a plant called sweet skunk we have here. It's also a haze phenotype at least, and it's we would flower the plant without veg at all. So you either flower the clones under 1212, or you just as soon as the plant's rooted, you'd put them into a hydro system at 1212.
Yeah.
And that short, what you're doing is depriving the plant of vegetative cues, right? That plant builds up, and those cues kind of become, in a way, of resistance for the plant to flower, right? And so you can control haze or plant morphology by just growing a ton of clones and flowering them early. So I'm interested to see what happens if you do that, Dominique.
Well, why not take cuttings on 1212?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, I guess too. Yeah.
Put them in a greenhouse, I would
But
suggest.
if you look at this flower, this is from a Laos type.
Oh man, I
I
want to
did
crush that flower up so bad.
like I did zero trimming on this.
Yeah.
So the leaf to flower ratio on this particular cultivar is insane.
Yeah, that's
You know?
wild. That's wild.
Beautiful.
And so if breeders can select for those attributes that then
What we want.
that's it. But
what cultivar is that one, Dominic?
this is a Laos.
Awesome.
It
Laos.
is.
Yeah.
Let it cure for like 3 months, man.
Oh, but this one cures really, really fast, eh?
Okay.
So this is already after 1 month, eh?
Yeah, that's because you cultivate it right. Then like you take off the chlorophyll residue anyway. Before, like you chop it, and then a month cure, and then bam, you're on it.
That's it, man.
Great work, man.
You know it.
Really good. Props to you. Really.
Yeah,
So I see a good future for Haze.
We did a trial once with the Haze hybrid at a facility in LA indoors, and it was about a 12-weeker and 12, 13-week plant. It's a hybrid. And it grew like a beast. And it was trying to do a licensing deal with this company. And it was right in the middle of the time when in California, all terpenoline dominant plants were labeled Jack terps.
Yeah.
Because the Jack cut had gotten so widely distributed and everyone grown it. And all the distribution guys were like, oh, we don't buy Jack terp weed, right? And so these guys grew these plants and they were struggling with the 12-week thing. Like we're struggling because we've got to give it a whole room because we can't grow any other cultivar side by side because they'll fuck it up, which is always what happens with long flowering trials is they try to squeeze it in a room or in a greenhouse. And it's like, even if you give it the extra time, it's like, no, all the inputs, the temperature, the humidity, everything that you did along the way, you got to do it to that plant or else it's not going to be fair. Anyway, they ran the trial. The flower came out pretty good. And they were struggling. And I asked the guy in head of R&D, I'm like, all right, now just give me a breakdown per day, per grain. How much money do you make per day in that facility per cultivar? Because that's the number you guys should be looking at. Not, is it 9 weeks? Is it 10 weeks? Is it anything? It's like, no, you guys, a facility, you're trying to profit. And they did it and they broke down and their top selling variety, which was an 8-week runt something, made the same exact amount of money per day in the facility as the 12-week. I'm like, do you see? Right. And they're like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not calculating in this equation veg time at all. This is just flower room. You're not calculating into this equation post-processing. and
Transport
labor
labor.
and plant
Exactly.
labor. They're not putting any of that in.
Exactly.
And then you're not even putting into the equation the morale and all the things that having to do 6 flips a
And the
year with
high,
their
and the
team.
high.
Well, yeah, no, that's the type totally like these are just plant guys, right? They're like total nerd
Yeah.
plant guys. They're not even
But
thinking
you're
about the
right,
drug component.
100%.
And then like, okay,
100%.
6 flips a year for facilities. Like I met the CEO one time. He was so proud that we do 6 turns a year on a 2-tier thing. And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? You're just talking about, I'm like, well, what if you could do 4 flips a year and get the same amount of yield? I
With
think
better
everyone's
weeds.
going to be happier. Just
Absolutely.
inputs, you know.
Absolutely.
Anyway, they'd never thought of it that way. They'd never even done the math, right? Because their mentality was locked into this market, which
That's
OG
it.
kind of
That's it.
claimed,
Well, that's
you know.
one of the reasons why the tissue culture model has kind of failed in cannabis is because they sold themselves as an alternative to cloning, right? But the cost to produce a tissue culture plant is really high. And so it works for things like if you're planting an orchard for fruit trees or like a vineyard where the plants, you don't have to plant once every like, you know, many hundreds or many tens of years, say at least. You know, when you're planting 6 times a year, like you have more planting costs, right? It's more time, it's more cleaning, it's more turnover. It's
The media alone, dude. Media got really expensive during COVID and stuff like that. And there were shortages and stuff on cocoa. You couldn't get the cocoa you wanted. There was perlite shortages. It was weird. So now it's like just that alone, these things, you guys are not really looking at the big picture. And to me, the hard part was just in this whole trial was that the consumer wasn't there wanting it. Everyone loved the weed. Everything was great. And that's
There's
why
no market.
the Dutch, the Netherlands, it's so important to remember that they kept the consumer alive for Haze
right.
Yep.
because they know what they're going to get and they're willing to pay for it. So there's a grower who's still going to
They
grow it.
know it.
Yeah, because and it's not about it being anything other than amazing weed. So it's like as soon as the consumer learns that, which is what Tony and Dave are doing, teaching the consumer, let them experience it. And our experience, you know, like in the early aughts and like in the early days of dispensaries, it was kind of like, you know, you just put it out there, and once people got it, they loved it. Like, and that was the day there was lots of Jack, Trainwreck, NL5 Haze, was all over California. You know what I mean? And it was all the highest selling, the fastest you know, selling out stuff. So it's like it's just another 20 years later, now we have to find the consumer again and let them experience it and see that
Yeah.
that weed lasts a lot longer and make them and have
Educate
them,
them.
yeah, and let them, well, they just got to pay more. That's the big one. It's like you got to commit to
Yeah.
paying more,
Welcome
just like
to
in
that,
Holland, you know.
man.
There's something else that I think plays into this conversation. A lot of people don't keep in mind. Marcus was over here with the Valenveris machine not too long ago, and testing some samples. And we were looking through these old hybrids I have, Conroy hybrids, and half the ones we tested were in the 20% range, but the other half were in the like 12% range. And Marcus rolled up a joint of that. And what were your thoughts on that plant, Mark?
We're
The
talking
effect?
about the 14 week, you mean? The one that I was given in the
No,
mail?
no, the one that you were smoking here when your hair left.
Oh, right. That was what was that? The Congo?
It was a Congo hybrid, yeah. It was one of the
Oh, right,
phenotypes of
right.
the Congo hybrid.
It was interesting. I mean, it didn't check the box like the Haze checks the box for me, but neither did the Congo. You know, this weed checked a different box than either of those two, which I guess for me is just reminiscent of the 16-week Haze that
Yeah,
I
well,
used
those
to grow.
that was the thing is those things weren't because that was done in a commercial facility. They had those plants had to be cut at like I think they were the 12th week. So like those lower testing samples were just not mature. They weren't frosting up. But the thing I was trying to highlight was that I remember you were talking about having like a very clear and up kind of effect, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
there's something to do with the THC level and how it influences like the type of effect, right?
agreed.
So I don't know how strong are your Dave? How strong are your not strong? What's the THC content of your pearl phenotypes? And that's why I was wondering too, Dominique, what those readings were on the hazes.
Yeah.
Like the ones that you kept, were they the higher THC content flowers?
No, I kept as much as I could keep. So I kept also the lower THC ones.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean,
But when you
THC.
sample them, Dom, which are the most striking to you in high effect? I mean, like
Well,
what
the
Ryan described,
the
like
ones
this,
the ones
the
that
up
are like
highs, let's say.
are like that qualify for the ceilingless label,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the psychedelic effects
Mm-hmm.
are around 17-18%, right?
And so you test them on other cannabinoids like CBN, CBD, like
Yes,
the synergy
yes,
between it. Because
yes,
what makes it
yes.
then? What makes this high so specific
Well,
when you
I don't know because like I
look
got a
at it
Malawi,
molecular?
I got a Malawi that is 26% THC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's super heavy, but it doesn't have that ceilingless attribute to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But it's
the,
higher in THC.
yeah.
So it's not what we're looking for only. It's the synergy between all of these molecules. And so I think, like we're just at the beginning of discovering this.
Uh, you know
So
what?
that's great stuff.
It's funny because I always thought terpinolene was responsible for the ceilingless stuff,
The up
um,
high,
the up high, but
the
yeah,
less
but
exhaustive.
it's not the same thing as ceilingless per se. So what we have a variety so that we selected to finish in 50 days that has about 41%, 45% on average of the terpene profile is terpinolene,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that one gets you really up, 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 but it's not ceilingless. It's not the same thing.
And
And
which are the
so,
ceilingless? Like, can you describe it? Like, what's the third profile? And like, say, the flower time.
yeah. So the ceilingless one is the one of 165 days.
Yeah.
So
So the
long flowering
longest.
time. And maybe it's that, and maybe it's a different ratio of ripened trichomes with stuff in
Yeah,
it. So
definitely.
I don't know
Yeah,
until
yeah,
we
of
can
course.
do a full
Sounds logic.
analysis.
Eh? The longer you let it run, the more,
Yeah,
the
I mean,
richness in the
if
trichomes
you look
will
at it,
grow on it.
if you look at the
But
trichomes, because new ones are being produced while other ones are like almost fully
ripening
senesced.
up,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
so
And that's
you
what
have
brings the gold. Yeah.
so you have like this window in which you could
Widespread
harvest it,
variety. Like
right?
it's
Yeah,
wider. Yes. Yeah. It's
yeah,
just a richer, like grapes and everything. Okay. If you make wine
but
from good grapes that are, harvested at a certain point, then you have
of
this
course,
high standard quality you cannot achieve with and so the valleys of making these grapes and the climate that's there, and so it's
I,
complex, to pinpoint it. I know what
yeah,
you mean, man, but it's
yeah.
beautiful also by that.
But it is for me I still haven't figured that out, the ceilingless
We're doing it
attribute.
together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and as we if we as we get more haze-like or longer flowering varieties onto the market by
Yes.
people like Dave and Tony, um, if we get more people coming through our facility and seeing those long flowering varieties in action, so to speak, and appreciate how they are
They
grown
will
and
have
nice
interest
grown,
more.
but also appreciate the way of growing it, how easy, so to speak, that is, how not labor intensive at all that is. That might just, incentivize more people over the coming years to give those genetics a try and offer that to patients. And if we can do that, then we can get more reporting on what the effects actually are, and we can combine. But so far, it's a rarity. Like here in the Netherlands, we're quite lucky that, as was said, the haze was kept alive by people like you, Sammy, um, or the haze hybrids, I must say. But I
There's
mean,
an interest for it in Holland
yeah, I
because it was
mean,
on the menu for
but
years, and so
if you
people
look at
got to appreciate it for what it is.
if
And
you
so,
look at
so always,
what is coming from if you look at what is coming from Cali illegally into the coffee shops, it's all candy gas. It
yeah,
has these, funny, funky names, but it all smells the same. And if I give you a Malawi and I give you a Laos and I give you an Indian, you're gonna have three totally different scent
experiences.
profiles and experiences, And that diversity with the consumer has kind of been overshadowed by the sudden avalanche of mass-produced commercial flowers that was, more of the same, and it still is more of the same. So, and as the population that has some experience with older varieties grows, nostalgia will kick in,
Yes.
and there will be a renaissance. In my mind, there will be a renaissance of the exo cognac varieties of cannabis, and I can't wait for that to happen because I think cannabis will be much more appreciated by people that don't appreciate it right now or just appreciate one side of its effect spectrum.
They are uneducated yet, and so we are here to educate them, man. And so what you're doing, props for you, all of you.
Renaissance, man.
You don't want something that you've never had. I mean, you got to have it. You got to try it first to want it. And it's
if you build it, they will
market
come.
is so monotonous. Exactly what you're saying. It's they might smell slightly different, something strawberries, something's bananas, but they're all the same effect, and they're all agronomically the same thing. That's what's driven it all. It's what's made it a single track. But
yeah.
So something I've been
guys, I'm gonna sign out here. I'm gonna
all
go
right,
back
Rob.
to bed. Actually,
Dude,
so.
thanks for coming on and sharing Haze stories with us, Rob. Appreciate you.
Oh, good, man. Oh, good. I love seeing you guys. I wish I could do this more often, but I'll be back at a better time zone someday. So, yeah.
Awesome.
All
Good to
right. Rob,
see you, Rob.
whenever
Thanks
you
for
are in
chiming
Amsterdam, come over.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I will, Dom. That's a nice invitation. I'll do it.
All right.
Check you this summer sometime.
All right. Perfect.
Cheers, Rob.
Do it.
Awesome.
Peace and love, y'all.
Bless up, buddy.
Yeah, something I've been curious about since this is Hash Church is, I see a lot of hash and rosin that's really light in color. And I feel like people are pearling it, let's just call it premature or early to get that color. Whereas, I'm looking at it from like, when is it going to be the best in terms of effect and the resin and all that? And so we took some pearls to 20 weeks and froze them. And I feel like, the color is darker, maybe a little bit because of that. And so that's something that I've struggled with. Like, okay, here's where the market is, what it's used to. But a lot of that is like, pulled at 6-7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You get something that's visually not what people expect. That can be a problem. But I'm just, I'm not really a hash head.
It's people eat with their eyes a lot of times. And until they experience something like a darker hash that takes them somewhere where they love it, they're going to go for the light stuff, even though it's only 7 weeks. In my opinion, the longer it flowers, usually the better experience. You got to find the right ones. It's not every plant that you grow, and you got to get the conditions right for it to express properly. But once it does that and you find it and you pass it around to your friends, everybody's loving it. So
yeah, I mean,
it's a matter
I think,
of experience, breaking the norm.
Yeah, I think you guys are on the right track. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I've definitely taken note of, taking varietals really far and seeing super light resin. And it's really about the chemical constituents that are in the resin. If there's more alcohols, it dries off faster and it starts to oxidize more. And sometimes those varietals, a lot of orange forward or, things that are in that spectrum are not are usually darker in my experience. And it's not necessarily when you're pulling stuff, honestly, because I've seen it go both ways for people where they've shown me resin that they pulled early that was darker. And but it's also processing techniques, like Mojave pulled up a traditional temple ball. And so there's a lot of ways to get to color is what I'm kind of highlighting, but I don't recommend anyone to pull plants for any reason early. Like it's like, why do all that work and literally cut yourself short of the Voltairean compounds that are developing, So
This is actually dry sift, but it's aged flour. Flour was aged for like 2 years before I've sifted it and pressed it. But I can say it's so wild. Rob would have commented on this, and David and Rob all both had different theories about it. But I think it's just fascinating how You press glands and they get dark, and then sometimes they get light again. And so there's a whole bunch of things like, you know what I mean? And it's whether it's water, whether it's the hydrocarbons doing their thing. It's fucking fascinating. And a lot of resin just will not go dark. And I'm old, so I only go old school. I don't make rosin, I don't make anything. I only press hash. And no matter how much heat you give it, no matter how much anything, some of it just stays in that gray zone. And then some of it just fluffs out, whites out, as Rob and Davies call it, go whitey, where it's suddenly like 3 days later, it's like, oh, it's hard rock, and you crack it open and it's a crumbly and lighter color all of a sudden. And there's just a certain kind of resin that has that bindability and that color. And I think it's that binding thing. And in the spectrum, Haze is horrible for it. It's like, it's one of the worst,
Yeah,
right?
it's hard for color.
It's
Yeah,
hard,
it's
and it's
like
hard to
Snow
bind
Lotus.
and extract. It's hard to knock those glands off those
Yeah. I think
stalks.
Haze is too
Haze
beautiful. It's
dabs.
flowers to make extracts from.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's it.
You know what
It's
I
too
mean?
sacred.
It's too sacred.
No, it's not. I just smoked a dab of the Haze, and it is.
Yeah. Okay. When you do it
It
right,
is
baby.
incredible.
But imagine, Marcus,
But
you
there's
imagine that you have like, so you have original Haze seeds, and you grow like all phenotypical expressions together, and you collect resin from all of it, and then you make hash.
Lovely.
Yeah,
I'm down.
So,
Hey, welcome to
usually
Fletch, who snuck in while we were talking. I just wanted to welcome Archive.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. I think the most obvious thing for color of hash is just oxidation of compounds. I think the freeze dryer kind of proves most of that for you, that you can see the difference between oxidized air dried hash and non-air dried, and then minimizing your oxidation through all your environmental controls if you are air drying. The other thing is like with the color of hash, in my experience, if oxidation is the main culprit, which I think we can all agree that things turn color over time due to oxidation, at the end of the day, whether you take it 20 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever it is, it's the color is really just going to be a representation of the ratio of oxidized compounds versus non-oxidized compounds when you harvest. And so you have every different variety has a different maturation of its trichomes, and some varieties start producing trikes early that fade off, and those are the ones that you end up with a lot of ambers visually. And then you have the varieties that don't really put on much resin, and then boom, dump it all at the same time. Those are probably going to have less amber heads because it produces all the compounds at more of a consistent rate relative to each other of the trichome formation, rather than stages of it where they mature and then degrade. And so just a higher concentration of degraded trichomes, whether that's due to varietal, flower time, oxidation in your room, light exposure, etc., is probably going to have the biggest impact on your quote unquote color beyond your drying process and the oxidation that occurs during your drying process.
Well, I will say that cultivars that seem to be terpenoline dominant or narrow leaf drug cultivars tend to have a darker resin. When I make rosin with those or hash, they are darker consistently. This one is legitimately like the way it came, and I'm sure the guy didn't make it very long ago. It's very small now because I've been dabbing it out, but I guarantee you this rosin, it looks like something that I forgot about and left for like 3 months in my drawer and then came back to open. It's got like a waxier, thicker sort of skin on the rosin that's different from these white, very light colored. It's too bad that people are triggered to not like that. And I get why they don't like it, because it's like, oh, well, that was like what happened to all the ones that I didn't really like that I left in my drawer. They all kind of look like that. But it's like you have to get past how it looks and you have to get into how it feels, because there is no other aspect of cannabis that has this is like a niche within a niche within a niche. That's what the Haze lovers are. That's what you guys all are. It's pretty awesome.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on with the highs too, really quick, if we go backwards just a second, is just Like if we haven't identified what the compounds are that cause that where you have all these people that have a similar experience from haze, how do we know that it's actually compound related and it's not just some sort of confirmation bias that we've basically moved forward with in weed? Because like for me personally, I've never really like thought that haze has like a ceilingless high or all the nuances that a lot of other people tend to experience. I think I just smoke so much herb, I don't notice as much of a difference. It doesn't seem to be quite as drastic of an experience change for me personally. Now,
But
and
it's
so, and
tolerance,
so
eh? It's a tolerance based
on that
something.
part of it, it's like, well, is it an actual chemical that's causing a different experience, or is it just kind of like bias that we already have built
But
in?
even if it's confirmation bias, will it not still work on the same mechanisms that the chemical would have worked on anyway?
The question really is, do people experience that blind tested? Right. That's where what it boils down to is like I can have my confirmation bias that I don't notice it because of my experience growing, and everybody else can have their experience with it having a discernible effect. But until we can identify either A, what the compounds are, or B, can confirm it through blind testing, do we really know that even that effect actually exists in a way, right?
Let me throw something in real quick.
Go ahead.
Back in the day when I smoked the best Thai sticks and the best Colombian that I ever smoked, I had a magnifying glass and I looked at those trichomes and there was a preponderance of amber. And I always kept that with me. That's my bias. I
The
mean,
bad patches I
I
saw
think
under a
that
microscope had that too. Vigilano.
yeah, the amber trichomes
Amber.
matter. And
Full
and
on.
I think the range of mature to immature gives you that spectrum of feelings and depth of high.
Totally.
That's just
I
my
mean,
theory anyway.
yeah,
I think
that's
there
my
has to
point
be,
is I don't think
but
we've even identified what causes it yet, which is the interesting part
That's
of
it.
the whole
Yes.
Right.
difference between
Yeah, there's
sativa and
we
indica thing
don't
is we
know at
haven't even
all for
Absolutely.
identified
sure.
it, but we have all this confirmation of experience.
Yeah. Well,
I,
it also tastes extremely different. So we don't like, I don't think that's a
It could be the
bias
terp
confirmation.
profile.
I think
Yeah.
we all can agree, like, oh, there's that. Like my wife the other day, I put it under her nose and she's like, oh, what is that? I'm like, well, it's kind of like a cat piss smell a
Yes,
little bit.
yes,
It's
yes,
this because this one's
yes.
really like on the hard edge of terpenoline, where it's almost like
Yeah.
it's ranking out at the end of that profile. But it's very, dude, I always love your perspective because you're right. Who knows? Is this? I mean, I think back to the original, I think back to Sam and how much this guy just loved getting high and how he bred this unbelievable plant that the whole world decided to grow. And while they were doing it, he was growing hazes. And I think like that's a pretty good. I don't know if that's confirmation biased. And then Sam's already was always sort of unapologetically like, I'm just trying to get as high as I can. I want to get the most high.
Yeah.
And I believed him every minute that I spent with that man. I
Well, that's the
believed
way
that
he
that
said
was
it
his
too.
mission,
It was always about the most high.
the most
Right?
high.
There was no doubt that was the
The
intent.
highest of the high.
And you guys, Rob said
I
it
think
earlier.
Fletcher's.
Rob said it earlier, and I think this is the big point about there. And there is some analytical data about showing that certain profiles do have some effect. But Rob said it earlier about haze. It's the absence of Afghan. So instead of looking for what it is in haze and narrow leaf varieties and Malawi and Thai and all these uplifting, energetic psychedelic varieties, it's really the absence of Afghan that makes them all similar. And so it's not just terpenoline, like people really use terpenoline. Terpenoline definitely has an effect. And I have done, man, we've done some interesting experiments with terpenoline in terms of adding it to other things to see what it does. And terpenoline, out of all the terps, is probably the one that really does do something on itself. You know what I mean? You can just add terpenoline into your distillate vape pen and it changes the profile significantly. But
The real thing is the absence of Afghan. So then that points to what is it in Afghan? And we thought we look at Afghan as myrcene, but now we're looking at Afghan as all the other stuff, all the thiols and all the other,
all the unperceivables.
Exactly. But because that to me, that back to my childhood experience is like when that Afghan thing happened, all the weed changed. And we were smoking Mexican, Colombian, Thai, African, Jamaican, Colombian, Panamanian, all these different types of weed that had a similar thread. And they were different. Yeah. Some of them were racier and some of them were psychedelic, but
it's a different genetic clade. It's like a different branch of the cannabis tree. And, you know, when we started doing this terpene thing that I laid out a few weeks ago, I kind of just stopped thinking about cannabis in terms of indica and sativa, right? One because sativa means hemp, right? So really, it's just a continuum of all the other traits. It's all what we call indica. Like even indica means the plants from India, not the plants from Afghanistan, right? So it's like, to me, that whole classification system,
that's true.
Just needs to be
because weed grows in Turkey too, and in Pakistan, and in Lebanon. So, you know, not just in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And
that's kind of always been my perspective, is that its place of origin is what's important with cannabis for me. The classification, sativa, indica, whatever else, and maybe that's just my perspective, but like I said, maybe I'm the outlier in the world that doesn't have the same experiences as everybody else.
Yeah, well,
all these cannabis varieties, but I mean, I've grown and still have lots of pure sativa varieties. You know,
I have the same experience.
Region of origin is an indicator of chemistry, right? That's really what it is. But it's not region of origin; it's the chemistry of the plant, right?
Of course, I'm just saying that's the best source of some sort of familiar genetics that is like, did they come from the same area originally? Okay, maybe they're related, but other than that, it's hard to
even if they are related,
but it transmutates to its environment. It transmutates to its environment, right?
Look at this
environment.
Look at this environment.
That's what it does.
Look at this plant that Caleb was bringing up, or this paper that Caleb brought up a couple of weeks ago, the high CBC plant, or the high CBC samples, right? It's like those places are all from India, but they had very different chemistries. Right, so
that was hash.
That's what I mean. I mean, like down to the village or the person it came from. That's kind of my point. Is like the ethnography of it is almost more important. If you're, and even then, it's no guarantee by any means. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, I see it totally
from, and then that's all you know, right? It doesn't tell you anything.
But look,
from a psychological point of view,
like you're talking about the family. It's not the family; it's the fucking way that they bred their line, right?
Yeah. I understand that. I'm just talking about where it came from. That's the only information you even have. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's true. But I can tell you from like there's certain lines that I know my bioassay responds to that like are certain outcrosses of certain original lines that are just I connect to. And then there's certain things that like just put me down. And I think to your point, Fletch, I think there is a chemical key or set of keys, right, if you will, that are doing that. And I think there is some sort of chemistry behind that. I don't believe there isn't. I don't think we understand it yet. Like absolutely. To your point.
Yes.
It's because like I was thinking as you're saying, I was like, man, I hit Band-Aid Haze rosin I made one time and I was like, I'm never making this again. It like literally put me to sleep. I was like out. Like it was like no uplifting effects. No, it was just like, I'm done. Good night. See you later, guys. So, to your point, I think that everyone's
a good alternative for sleeping pills
is different. Like I think we all have these different responses to, with our receptors. Yeah, it's really. I think there's just so much to learn.
And you said something
makes it so difficult.
Is you guys are both smoking rosin. So that's the thing is when you're trying to see the subtle nuances between different cultivars in concentrated form, man, it's really hard. It's really hard.
I smoke mostly flower.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Joints are the
Yeah, but
way.
I just made it. I made this batch of Band-Aid Haze because a friend of mine had it, and he was like, "Yeah, we got to make this." He's like, "You got to do your thing with this," and I'm like, "Yes, we do." And then I remember, I was like, "Take the whole thing. I don't want this. This is all yours, dude." I think I
Too
still have some in the
extreme.
freezer. Honestly, it's funny.
Yeah, I mean that's been my experience is just after so many years of growing so many different plants and having so many different experiences with them or lack thereof of difference.
Yeah.
I can't say that I could discernibly tell you this one is or isn't a certain type of high based on its whatever I can perceive. And then the other thing is like if those effects are discernible based on the chemical composition of those specific plants, it should be identifiable in double blind testing, right? And if it's not, then it's basically a figment of our imagination, right?
Well, who's done that testing? That's what I was showing the
Well,
other
that's
day.
my point. No one's done it yet.
Yeah, well, that's what I was showing the other day when I was talking about those type 1, type 2, and 3 varieties. It's like when you see people that are trying to do these double blind tests, they're comparing like a 1-to-1 myrcene dominant plant to a type 1 terpinolene dominant plant, right? And it's like it's not just they think it's the cannabinoids, but you've got this huge confounding variable of all the other volatiles.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like unless you have the
100%.
plants to do the clinical trials, it's kind of pointless, right? Which is one of the reasons that we made all those different flavor class plant.
Which one's that?
Can I ask you, Colin, how did you make this Band-Aid 7 rosin? Was it from fresh flowers or frozen flowers? Or?
Fresh frozen. Yeah,
Fresh frozen,
we
okay.
fresh
Yeah.
frozen material. It was grown
Okay.
actually inside. It was indoor material. It was really clean. It was beautiful. Actually, got really good yield.
Did you make hash from it?
Yeah, we made hash first. So we made water hash first. Sorry. Thanks for correcting me. Make sure I give you the journey. So we harvested, froze it, and then I washed it in our cold room.
But then you
and
add a
fried it.
soluble with water. So you take a little bit of the terps out, right? Not?
There's a lot of debate over that. I think that if you're rupturing heads, I think that can happen. I don't know. How's everyone feel about like all this water stealing terps? I know we've talked about it before.
Okay.
I think it's minimal.
There's
Okay.
volatiles
Your
elsewhere.
freeze dryer does more damage than your wash vessel. Honestly, if you do that wrong, you get your Militor zone wrong. I see that often where people are in like 500 MTs and you're like your peaks are way too crazy for that to be meaningful to preserve the actual volatile.
There's volatiles in the rest of the plant material anyway, not just the resin glands, right? So it's like a lot of the volatiles in the water don't come. A resin gland isn't a wiffle ball, right? It doesn't have a bunch of holes in it. The water flows through the resin gland.
Yeah.
If you're doing it right and the temperature's cold, sure, there's some incidental loss, but I don't think it's that significant.
I don't think it's significant enough.
Good to know. Good to know.
The trichome loses more volume during air drying, right? So
air drying and freeze drying is where I see the most loss. That's from trying to test most of it. It's really difficult to test wet material, to be honest.
Shout out to Mojave, who also has a dry sift sativa ball. Boom.
Absolutely.
Boom.
Let's melt them, Marcus. Let's see.
Mine's not that melty. I made this for the Quebec market.
Oh, perfect. This is now mine's pretty. Oh, there you go. It's got a little
It's
bit.
a little bit of a melt, not much.
I have a little bit of the same.
Here's some
I have a little
15-year-old,
ball.
but it's unpressed.
This is where I like it though. I like
traditional
like
hash is really coming back. A lot of people are demanding it.
So this is all traditional also. See,
it's kind of nice to see.
Moroccan.
I like the 3-star. Honestly, I like it because I used to make really like as far as I could take it and then just put it back on top of weed and smoke it. Because that's my favorite way to put a green screen and then put the hash on top. And I was like, and it was the weird thing is like I'm putting the same weed that I just pulled all the resin off and then putting it back on top of the weed. I was like, it's kind of weird. It's like an exercise and like, can I do it? And then like just put it back. So I'm like, well, 3-star is kind of like that compromise where it's still got enough of that plant material in there. You can, and then you get way more yields and, and I'm making it for myself anyway.
Yeah. No, there's something to be said for it. It's kind of more like a warm hug than a rocket ship to the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
know?
for me. I don't
Yeah.
want to smoke. I don't want to smoke impurities.
It,
I want both exactly in the same
I'm
time.
with Ryan.
it tastes like mom's home cooking. You know what I'm saying?
But you're smoking paper right now.
Yeah, but it's different when it's what the contaminant is in the hash.
Yeah.
You know.
But if you make the hash, you can know what the contaminant is.
Like by volume, this is
Well,
maybe
it's produced from
5%
flour,
paper,
so you
but
have to know how the
but
flour
three-star
got
hash
grown.
is 50% contaminant, you know.
Right, but the point I was making is I was shooting for 5 or 6 star and then just putting it back on the
Hard
same
truth.
weed I just took it off.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's like it was basically
You're
putting
just
it back
reintroducing.
on the
No,
contaminant. So I was like,
yeah.
why?
But check it out. Check it out. The
It's different gold.
contaminant, which is
It's killer.
50% on the hash, 50% contaminant, would probably be 75% contaminant on the flour, plus the paper and the glue.
Right. Right.
Oh,
So
I agree.
the
But
math
we
doesn't matter.
We like the flour.
True story.
Smoke the leftovers from a
With
rosin
that, I'm
bag
gonna
and
do a
tell me
dab.
you like it.
Ooh.
Like I don't know anybody.
Dude, that's my
that-
stash, bro. That's my whole stash
Yeah,
is rosin
like,
bag
press
press.
some rosin, get the good shit out that you actually like, and now smoke what's inside the bag. Find me someone doing that, and then I'll believe you.
Well, I do. I mean, that shit is in the full melt, and I don't mind it when it's there.
It's not that you don't mind it. It's just the preference would be that it's not ideally right now. Certain varieties,
I can't say that
gonna,
because when I
they're
get
not
it
going to
out with
produce
rosin,
that. You know,
when I get it out with rosin, I don't care about production or amounts, just for my head. But when I pull it out with rosin, I turn rosin into a dessert. Whereas when I smoke it in the bubble is like a 5-course meal. And so there's something else getting filtered out that is of
certain
value.
bubbles won't make 5 or 6 stars, so you're just stuck with
Yeah,
what
but I
you
don't.
are.
I'm not fucking with those too much.
Refine it.
That's
you
what.
know?
That's why the whole rosin market exists. It's where mediocre bubble goes to die.
Or really nice bubble goes into heaven, but one of the two.
It's more often the first.
Agreed.
Well,
agreed.
Not you're right, Marcus. But it's
well,
tough because the market. I wish we could sell all our hash. You know.
No, but I agree with what Fletch is saying. I mean, there's practices that are done for the market, and then like the Haze kind of philosophy, there's the practices that are obscene that you take on for the head, right? That would be seen as like cultural or not cultural, but commercial suicide. Like taking it. I remember Cam came over to your place once, Marcus, with that limonene and pinene really hazy equatorial plant, and we pressed up a bunch into very little rosin. But it was delicious, right? Like it was commercial suicide, but it was some of the nicest hits that we've had. And I think, you know, if we were all together in a room and we had the finest in a jar, I know that Marcus would be going for the top 5-star or 6-star, right? Like that's probably what you'd be smoking, given you had the choice.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the majority of what I want to smoke for sure. But I do understand entering the hash market. I understand the value of the other products, like hitting a 30 or a 35% or a 40 or there's a whole variety of different times and places where one can be more enjoyable than the other. But when you're an anomaly like myself and you're just climbing this, like, I'm just going to be chain smoking the world's greatest dabs of every possible option, living soil, whatever, then you become a little bit
snobbery.
Yeah, you just, you're living in a bubble, pun intended.
There's a combustibility.
That's why you're bubble man, Marcus.
It's how combustible. To me, there's a lot to do with like and for everything, even for flour, like different types of flour that combust differently, it's a different effect. And how much air. I mean, I remember I used to sell, I used to manage some head shops, and you guys remember this, like when downstems were coming around, how much the width of that downstem, the diameter of that downstem hole shaped so much of the initial effect of snapping a bong hit, right?
Yeah.
And different flour, that's one thing, the beauty about Haze and these more lax fluorescence type plants is that the way they combust is so smooth, and it's like, and to me, hash, the chemistry doesn't change as much as you go to the refining. But the thing that profoundly changes in the bowl is how it combusts And how it combusts has a lot to do with that first onset effect. How well you like, when you don't do a good job sinking a dab or anything, you're in for a nasty ride. And it's not that it's different. The chemistry didn't change. It's how you took it into your body that changes.
I agree.
I think that has a lot to do with the
Hot
different
dabs,
grades
hot
of
dabs
hash
only.
purity and the different types
100%.
of flower.
100% it does, because it controls
Hey,
the
guys,
experience. Go
Not
ahead.
to interrupt, but we got to jump off. I gotta
Well,
do
thanks for
chores.
coming on,
Later,
guys,
guys.
and talking hazes with us. Good luck with that pound, man. Let me know where I can send someone to go buy some for me, because I wanna have some of that sitting for me in Cali when I go down there.
Right
Hey,
on.
Dave, my jar's getting empty.
I gotta roll too,
Yeah.
guys. I gotta
Thanks,
peace
guys.
out. Much love, everybody.
Yeah,
All right.
All right, you
Much
guys
love.
have a
next
good
week.
Nice to meet
good
you.
rest of
Guys.
your day. You guys
Have
should
a
have
beautiful
been
day, everyone. Good to see y'all.
Appreciate
This evening.
dude, I feel like running a marathon right now after smoking these haze joints and haze dabs. It's just like, it is definitely different. I think that it would be wonderful if the world could experience it, and especially in the commercial market.
Availability.
How do you make such a thing available? How do you make it economically viable?
I think it's more economically viable than commercial
easy.
strains.
It's easy, Marcus. It's very easy.
Yeah, well, you
Hard
figured
work.
it out with the lights. I think that's a big deal, dude. What you said about the
Well-
lights, that's a big deal.
I think that the prerogative is keep it simple, stupid, and try not to do anything at all.
Simple but
Right?
effective.
Let the plants work. Let the plant provide the conditions for the plants, and some
They
might
do
not
their magic.
like this, but stop touching the plants. You can look at them, you can speak nice words to them, but leave them alone. Leave them be, and they'll turn out perfect. So yeah, I mean, labor is a big thing. Energy is another thing, but depending on where you are in the world, it's an issue or it's not an issue. But I mean, every licensed producer can, differentiate themselves in the market by offering something that, the competition is not even remotely thinking of or capable of growing. So I
That's
think
the
the
latter
ones
mostly.
that dare to go there, I think they'll be in for a good time. Maybe not immediately, but as soon as word gets out,
Do you think the best way to kind of promote this concept so people can get a decent yield is to kind of grow it on this lattice with side under canopy
Well,
lights turned
you know-
sideways, basically? Or?
Arcus, if you want to do that at scale, it becomes an engineering question, right? So I'm not an engineer. So let them figure that out, how we can implement that at scale. But I think it is very, very doable. And people should, try to make the jump. And if they're too scared of making that jump immediately, that's why
Start small.
we exist. They can drop by at our events. They can come and see for themselves. I mean, if seeing is believing, then experiencing that can be life changing. It's the same thing with the no veg method. So I had guys over here that came all the way from California, and I would show them those clone to flower and no veg, and I jokingly would ask them how long that they veg their plants was anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks.
Jesus.
Like, okay, so I show them the plants in the room, and I asked them, how long do you think they had veg? Maybe 10 days, maybe 14 days. I said 0 days. And some of them, I kid you not, they had tears in their eyes, not because everything is so beautiful over here, because they realized how much labor and money they were throwing away needlessly, right? Because as people veg their plants, they go into flower, then they take away all the leaves again. You just fed the plants all this energy and labor and time into growing those leaves, and the first thing that you do when the plants enter flower is take everything away again. I mean that's not logical, but it's by people experiencing this, so both with a end product like the product from Dave and Tony at Modularo, and seeing some of these plants at our facility here, I think that is kind of where it has to start, and us talking about it, you know.
Well, I just can't stop thinking about it since you showed those images. And I mean, it would just engineering wise, you're just taking the grow and turning it sideways with like rows of lighting that goes in with rows
Yeah.
of plants that go in that grow up the
It is,
lattice. It's,
you know,
I mean, I've grown haze in those Omega gardens 20 years ago.
oh my God.
But that's it, man. So,
but did you hear his yields?
No, but it can yield really well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Omega gardens were highly productive. It was like 2.5 pounds from 20 square feet back then with 1,200 watts.
There we go. So
how many watts were you using, Dom?
I was doing 200 watts.
And getting
4 kilos a year per square meter.
So I'd have to do some math real quick.
We're gonna revolutionize the market here, yeah, guys. You understand that?
Well, if you don't have to veg and the whole plant can just be blooming because it's a narrow leaf and it's going to grow anyway, that's it. Yeah. That's 6 weeks. That whatever that, however many days they're vegging for, that's your savings. But obviously, the time that you go over these short flowering periods into long flowering periods is where it becomes less economically viable. I just love the idea of finding economic viability for these.
You know, Marcus,
for the haze.
It's like if you look at what the plant does in nature. That's my reflex. That's my baseline. I look at what does cannabis as a plant species do in nature, right? So they can go like 5-6 meters tall, you know. But what lacks often in that natural setting is a way to fully come to full flower. Maybe they can set some seeds and they can survive, etc. But other than that, we know what the plant is capable of, and we have a greenhouse that is like 4, 5, 6, 7 meters tall. So we have a huge volume. Does it make any sense of growing really small plants and having shitty microclimates, pumping in a ton of energy to redeem those microclimates? You know, all these fast flowering cycles. I mean, yes, we can go to eight cycles a year with genetics that we have that are just 6-weekers. That's great, but it means 8 times making clones, 8 times harvesting, 8 times cleaning. And yes, it has its advantages that it poses a lower risk for pest and disease to develop in that shorter time on your crop. So it has its advantages. But if you're growing in a greenhouse, look at what they do here in the Netherlands with tomatoes and cucumbers. They grow them sky high, as high as they can get. So they bind them on the trellis, guide them all the way to the top, and then have them flower and bring in these tomatoes, you know, by the bunch, and making use of the cubics instead of the square footage or the square meter, right? So there are certain varieties in cannabis that can be grown like high wire vegetables. I'm sure of that. So why aren't we doing this?
And the greenhouses that these companies have bought are greenhouses that were being used for that. They were literally designed for exactly what you're talking about.
Those tomatoes, though, are multi-harvest, right? They're indeterminate.
Yeah.
So that's something we need to breed into the plant. And haze is a potential for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not just so easy. I still think one of the ways is going to be flowering plants that you can root under 12-12 when they get very little veg queue, and then they're equatorial and they have enough stretch that they can still put on a frame is going to be what ends up being the way.
We'll have those results in for you, Ryan, by the acceleration day in June. So make sure you come.
In June.
And a lot of facilities
we're putting you on stage, man, because we've got a theme for that acceleration day for genetics. So I would love to have you and like Usama Badat come out and talk, man. So
and you guys should just like a lot of facilities are switching over to vegging in place, as they call it. right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's been looking at those numbers going, what has this veg room been doing for us? What is this facility? And they're like, man, this veg room is a complete waste. It should be a flower room. Therefore, let's veg in place. Well, then what's the next question? What's the shortest amount of time we can veg in place? It's like zero, buddy. You're
Zero.
growing the wrong kind of weed for that
Zero.
type of production. So now turn your whole facility into one big giant fucking flower room,
That's
and
it.
clones take up nothing, man. Racks of
Yeah.
clones,
There
boom,
you
you're
go.
done.
Yeah.
That's what in Amsterdam I used to grow sea of green,
Yeah.
because I was growing sage in a fucking shed that had a 6-foot ceiling, right? So I was like, I didn't even have time to let the plants germinate. I was like, man, you guys better not
Yeah,
grow.
smart.
Don't grow. Don't grow. You know what I mean? So, but that was the beauty. It was just like put them in the ground. It's done. You know.
You know, and
That's
I
it.
mean, like Jorge Cervantes is doing a piece on the no veg technique from clones pretty soon, and the way we came about this, because I've done Sea of Green as well back in the day, before I started in Exo, but um, doing a lot of plants per square meter, you can do that, but what's the point? So we came up with a way to kind of gauge the planting density of the different varieties that we work with in this no veg system, right? And depending on the variety, your optimal is going to be between 6 and like 14 per square meter. And with the haze plants and the equatorial ones, you can have one plant per square meter, and easily fill up that garden. And then it's about, how to smartly go about it.
Can I ask what your mothers are on 24 or 18 hours?
18.
And you root under 24 or 18?
No, we root under 18 as well.
Okay. So the plant
for now.
the plant material is technically getting 18 hours of veg right up until, and that's kind of my point, is that there's like for every given plant, there's obviously a genetic switch for how long it takes for it to flower, right?
Yep.
So how much veg time it gets really influences that characteristic. So,
yeah.
But like with Sea of Green, we selected specific plants for a type of system.
Yep.
And that's one of the beautiful things about cannabis, is you saw that that morphology or that variation
and
get in architecture, right? And that makes a big difference.
And that's it. So when you pheno hunt for selecting certain varieties to be produced at your facility, when you pheno hunt, I mean, it should be more about plant architecture than taste or effect per se, because the plant architecture is gonna allow you to succeed as a cultivator and lower your risk profile and make sure that you're more efficient. And as you have these different facilities, different cultivation systems, there is no standard for cannabis, so everybody kind of has to customize the plant for themselves. But I think that a lot of cultivators nowadays are trying to put a square in a hole,
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Just because something has a name to it, or it is a little bit more gassy or a little bit more sour than this or that one, that's missing the ball a little bit as a grower, as a producer. So plant architecture is and I see this when I get genetics from or seeds from the US. The genetics are completely different, and it looks like they have kind of selected a way for plant architecture and more towards trichome density and THC production and all that kind of stuff. So I think
you can blame OG for that.
What?
OG, you can blame
Yeah,
OG Kush for that. I mean,
I know.
and that was an example of like, and this was before the big mass commercial international market of today, is a couple of guys in their closet looking at that weed going, whoa, that thing grows kind of fucked up. and then smoking it and going, holy shit, this is something new. And then, and that because it wasn't plant breeding and it wasn't agriculture or horticulture, that amazing chemistry of the plant was 100% what drove that plant to become the backbone of a lot of modern cannabis.
Yep.
And where if anyone was doing it the way they should, like you're mentioning, Dominic, the first thing it says, like, no, we can't grow that. Do not introduce that into the gene pool. It's going to make it really hard for people to grow this plant.
I mean, we didn't
But skunk
use
is also like that, and not just
trellis.
OG. I think skunk did it too.
No, but skunk architecture is much more
powerful.
OG
Yeah.
is a funky plant that grows really floppy and weird.
Mhm.
And that, like, the reason that so many plants have that lodging branch thing where they flop over like that was because OG got introduced in a way that brought these floppy doppy branches that most
I
plants
understand,
didn't have that before OG. Plants used to hold their strength. Now the Haze stuff does that, but it goes all the way up first. It makes that primary apical dominance is still somewhat there. OG has it, but it's just a beast. You know what I mean? So it's like,
you know, when we started in Exo, the first seeds that I popped from the fridge to make a selection was a pre-1990s skunk that David got me the first time that we met at a cup in Amsterdam. And I crossed it a couple of years ago with a South African landrace. And those genetics, I don't need a trellis for those. You know, they keep upright. What's more labor intensive, doing nothing or getting everything wrinkled up in the trellis? Come on. And now I'm seeing like 3 or 4 layers of trellis. What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? As an industry, what are we doing?
Well, nobody's taken the time to harvest those traits that are responsible for the flower and moving it into a plant with better architecture. It's not hard, right? Like architecture really is a relatively simple set of Mendelian traits that you can just move into any chemical background. But it's all shrublato and stumble on the right plant, and once you got it, it's the one, and you couldn't possibly change the one, right? Because it's the one. So it's the problem when we look at these plants as like, I don't know, these like mythical creatures that are the ultimate. And we don't really look at them as an assemblage of traits that we can move into different backgrounds or morphologies that we can make plants that work in our systems. That's what breeding is about.
Yep.
Or it should be, right?
It's catering to the consumer's demands, though, is what it is. Also, and so you have the consumer's demands. Right. Well, here it is. I mean, I've had a dispensary for 10 years. I'm pretty sure I know what people are asking for.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, but do they know what the choices are? Do they?
Yeah,
really...
they do. I offer all of these things, including pure sativas, Albert Walkers. I've put super silvers in the store. I've put all kinds of stuff in the store. I mean, like just what I've found the most success with for the consumer and also for the grower is to breed these older varieties once or twice into more modern things. And you can still get like no veg, like this plant right here, no veg, and it's like goes 3.5 feet and yields quarter-pound plants, right? I mean, it does great. And it's a Hawaiian sativa cross to a modern variety, then cross to a modern variety again. And it basically retains most of the characteristics that make the original variety unique. The Hawaiian sativa doesn't smell like sherb or cookies or any of that stuff at all, but it's productive enough that the producer can actually afford to offer it at a price that the consumer is willing to pay. And unfortunately, at least on the West Coast particularly, people just don't appreciate that long flowering herb. You're not going to get rewarded for growing it, even if you make it productive in your facility. You still have to cater to the consumer's demands, and that just really is what it is at the end of the day. And I've had the best success catering to trying to introduce them to new varieties by breeding with those varieties instead of trying to force them on them.
So this is the trick. If you want to fund your Haze project into any recreational marketplace, this is how you do it. I'm giving you a gold nugget here. I know I'm smiling, but it's the truth. All you have to do is sell ground weed, distillate, and botanical terpenes in bags, in fucking jars, in pre-rolled joints that are rolled really jankily and badly. You could call them like fucked up joints or bad joints or whatever. And that will fund any amount of economic loss that you will occur. And I'm not even joking. I wish I was. I really wish I was joking. But you can do that. You can offset that. You can easily offset all the money you want to spend on your greenhouse and everything you want to do with haze plants to bring them to the world. Unfortunately, you can do that with floor
Let me
sweeping.
add one thing to what you're saying exactly, Marcus. And this is the unfortunate truth here in America is the haze profiles are the most easily reproduced by botanical terpenes, the like fake shit. So to like you're offering a product that's actually by most consumer standards associated with the cheapest product in the market because jack smelling fake terp infused whatever that's a lot of the like consumer the cheap consumer market.
Well,
so it's unfortunately here because it's the most easily to replicate with fake terps. You what are you standing out from at the end of the day? It's like making a heady Pepsi. It's like, yeah, but still the flavor's still Pepsi. How are you going to get $10 for a can of Pepsi when it still tastes like cola?
Well, I think here's, and let me take an ethnobotanical approach if I can, on what I think you're saying, Fletch, about the market. And this is something that I've struggled with for a long time, and there's that whole fallacy of assuming that what you like other people like or something, right? And I get that. Like I'm an old school sativa head because I was imprinted as a very young child on all this thing. And when I moved to
I love them
Amsterdam,
too. I love
no,
them
no,
too.
but when
But
I
the
moved to
market
Amsterdam,
doesn't reward me for that
right?
opinion.
But here's what I think. This is what I think happened is that as the forces of prohibition changed the gene pool through hybridization and the influence of Afghan, and remember, all Afghan varieties were generally, or that region was a hashish variety, so no one was smoking that profile in flower or rosin or fresh, right? All of that was a new thing to the world. So as this new thing to the world happens, which is fresh Afghan chemistry, right? The world also changed in terms of what they want from cannabis. Meaning, hey, what is the biggest problem in the world? It's opiate addiction, it's alcohol. People want to disassociate and turn it off. It's a weird, complicated, anxiety-ridden space these days. 100%. So now the old cannabis, and this is the far out thing that I started hearing more and more and more, is like some people are just like, oh, terpenoline, narrow leaf, I don't touch that. That stuff scares me. It makes me feel edgy and anxious. So like the innocence of mankind and the way they would interface with that type of a thing is maybe lost for now. And you can't just reintroduce it and say, hey, everybody, we should all be uplifted and energized and psychedelic as much as I think we should. The rest of the market is like, no, dude, I want to sit here and play a fucking video game, zonked out for 6 hours straight. I'm not thinking about the universe on my fingertip anymore. You know what I mean? I'm done with that. So it's like, it's sad. It's sad to think that happened. And I don't think it would have happened sans prohibition because it was an agronomic thing, not a chemistry thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I follow that deep in it. I think it's that the kids grew up knowing indica and that's what they recognize as high. Right.
That's essentially what I'm saying. But we forced that on them.
Yep.
Prohibition forced that on them. We navigated those prohibition waters to make that happen.
Yep. Exactly.
We ended up
It's a collective effort.
It wasn't an idea that we'd get there. We just ended up where we landed, and that's
there was no destination, right? It was just
there's
it
a
ended up there.
renaissance now happening, right? That's why we're here. There's a renaissance happening in the.
Well,
I think people are
American consumers
more into
have
the
the
value
choice.
of these plants.
Yeah,
the richness that's within these plants.
Yeah, so, and it's like maybe as an
I think the
industry,
market is very
we've gone too
immature,
far
and
and
we
we
need
lost kind of the
maturity in it and
balance of the
wisdom.
different effects. So,
Yeah.
so if we can bring back that balance
Yes,
and
that's what it's all about.
introduce that diversity.
Yes, but I don't
As-
think Haze will ever be commercials such as cookies. It doesn't necessarily is, because these
It's a
people that
different
work
product.
all day, they want to
Different
come
product.
home and smoke a joint, and like you say, they relax, sleep, bomb.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
smoke a firecracker, well, you won't sleep, and the next day you must go work. So, you know,
Sure.
Yeah,
it's
that's
only
true.
for the people that can do it that do it. It's a lifestyle,
It's
okay?
it's about
So
function, and it's like it's
it
how
can be
well
a
do you.
niche market, you know, always.
Yeah.
But that we build this niche market to be its highest quality possible. That's what it's all about, and that's available. And the people that embrace it for such will always do. You know, it's something. So, but the Americans need to wake up a little bit in their productive set of mind, like Dominic is showing them, and then they will step up the game and say, "Hey, it's actually a good idea."
It's also
It's
also
funny
about
that it's
fashion, eh?
happening in Holland again.
It's
But
all
anyway,
it's also about fashion, eh? It's what I said
it's
in
true.
the beginning
Yes.
of the talk. In at the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s, nobody wanted purple anymore. Now suddenly everybody wants purple, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, purple,
And
man. I
so
also want purple. Okay, I want every color, but so especially the gold.
yeah, and I want to have the choice, you
Yes,
know?
that's it.
You know what's funny,
Diversity.
Dominique, is I
Yes,
use
that's
that
what it's all
fashion.
about.
I talk
Yes.
about fashion a lot with flavors. So it's interesting to hear you say that because it's cyclical, right? Like the varieties that we had
Yeah.
that go away, they become nostalgic to people, and they're like,
Exactly.
"Why don't we have that anymore?" I remember when we used to have
Sour.
weed that was X, Y, Z, right? Yeah, we always
No,
want
but
something
that's
now.
true. And like in that view, we have the chance now of improving these cultivation systems for the plants that we have now. But I want to look a little bit along the road when fashion, when the nostalgia kicks in and the renaissance happens, that there are systems in place where we can have some licensed producers, branch off and specialize in that kind of a niche and an area, because that will incentivize breeders as well to work with those plants again instead of. And
Yeah.
this is how we open back up that genetic diversity, is my humble opinion.
I think of it like bell bottoms. Like when I was very young, bell bottoms were a thing, and then they went away, and they've come back twice, right? Since. And I think cannabis is kind of the same way. I think in vitro, like in vitro cryopreservation it would be really good for someone to do, to make a cryo bank of cannabis varieties of clones, and then just things
Yeah.
that we can pull back,
Absolutely. Yeah.
just
Absolutely.
tuck them away, and they don't take a bunch of plants to grow in your greenhouse. We can.
There we go, Bobby.
I was just thinking like the one thing that I remember the most as a kid, because we grew a lot of weed in our community, but we also imported a lot of weed, is how visually different and chemically different it all was. And a lot of that had to do with how it was dried and how it was pressed and preserved and shipped and stuff like that,
Absolutely,
But
yes. Also,
it was also made it so fun and exciting. It was a bunch of different plants, and you know what I mean? And that thing of just like looking and seeing like the diversity in 1 year, like in 1 year of importing and growing and sharing weed, you saw so many different kinds of weed. And each time it was like they were all just different. And like Rob would always say, like modern weed, wouldn't want to drop it on the floor. You wouldn't know which one's which, right? Because they all do boom, 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 a bunch of little round nugs with a little bit of this, a little bit of that, And I think that's the big part that the consumer kind of misses out, is just the full experience of it being very different. Finding out, even if it's just 2% of the market that likes this, or 8% of the market that likes this, but also back to the thing about Haze, I think one of the things is that, people consume so much cannabis nowadays. The receptors are so down-regulated, it's really hard to see the nuance and effect, and it just really turns to one word, which is flavor. Everybody just breeds, selects everything, sells, buys on what
flavors do you like? What flavors are you growing? What's your favorite flavor of weed? And it's like we're really turned cannabis into alcohol, where you're just high on THC.
Yeah.
So the 10 seconds that you're high, the 10 seconds of you sucking it into your mouth are the thing that you're selecting for. And I get that because cannabis now, like I get weed from, like the weed I love to smoke has very little aroma and flavor. And the weed people give me is so intense. It's like smacks you in the face with an experience. It's great. It's fantastic, you know, and Haze will never be that. Malawi will never be that. You know, Thai will never be that. It's a different thing.
Those like Malawi Gold has one of the most intense afterburnt aromas, like the incensiness in the air. Haze, the same thing. Colombian Gold. I mean, they're aromatically very uh overwhelming at times. I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons you have so many people that don't like Jack and Jack terps, and they just call it all Jack terps, is because it is such a strong profile, and it does hit you in the face like that. If you don't like that, then you're not going to enjoy it, and that's really the most difficult thing. Is no matter how much all of us like it, or it doesn't bother, or it doesn't have that effect on us, there's just a lot of people that whether it's confirmation bias from other people or their actual experience, have an experience with Haze that they do not enjoy. Like
I'm
Mo
the
said,
opposite.
I remember a thing like 10 years ago in California, people would be like, bro, I only smoke OG. That turned into I only smoke cookies, and now it's like I smoke gelatos, but I won't smoke Haze. You know, it's like I remember even you remember Jibs and those guys. You remember they had OG over Haze sweatshirts.
I remember.
Right? Because that became a popular mantra amongst this.
They gave me one, but I wasn't feeling it.
And the thing to keep in mind too, that's the thing that's really difficult about cannabis from a commercial and industrial perspective is that the main consumer base of people that spend money on cannabis is 18 to 28 years old, right? So every 10 years, I mean, that's constantly evolving, but every 10 years, you've got a majority of the money that's coming into your business is coming from an entirely new group of consumers, right? So being able to adjust on the fly to the demands of the consumer that changes that quickly, not to mention how flash in the pan a flavor or new cannabis strain is in the first place. And you've got realistically, which is why we have the breeding we have these days, is the economic timeline of these varieties is so short that you literally can't invest. It's impossible to do the work we're talking about and maintain a market long enough to justify the expense.
Yeah.
That's why you gotta just grow for your head. Always just grow for your head, man. At least you have good weed to smoke.
Yeah, but you know,
to that, man.
just to add to that, I mean, if I think we're selling Haze short as we're looking at it as mostly terpinolene dominant. So Ryan, from all the seeds that I grew plants out of, there was zero terpinolene in the smell. You know, it probably shows up somewhere in some of the profiles, but it were, you know, very distinct profiles. So whenever I think of Haze, before I grew those seeds from David, I would always think of Haze as this, you know, lemon-like peppery terpinolene smell. But then I grew those old seeds from David, and none of them had this terpinolene profile. They were much more.
I always call the terpinolene plants Dutch haze.
Yeah,
because it's what the Dutch refer to as haze. I mean, there's so many. Amnesia haze is a perfect example, right? Amnesia haze is essentially that terpinolene haze with a kick of myrcene. But it's sweeter. It's a little sweeter than the terpinolene one, or the terpinolene astringent one.
So this is also what like the narrow leaf drug varieties represent. Is much more than terpinolene.
Oh,
I mean, the Malawi will knock you out as well, eh? I mean, sure, there's much more uplifting effects, but if you smoke the Papua that I have here, or the Malawi, or the Laos for that matter, you're going bye-bye.
So yeah, like good old Thai can be, it's like bomb. It's this paranoia we completely, I love it.
But yeah, like we had the Nigerian, which was super paranoia, right?
Yeah. The noise is in there then.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah.
That's why it scares people. Eh?
Do you have terpene and volatiles on all that stuff, Tom?
Yeah, I have. And
We should
it's
do all
like some
that.
of the stuff you wouldn't even believe that there would be like myrcene in it, but then it comes back as being myrcene dominant. Like
Yeah.
the or Papua New Guinea, it has this everybody that I have had it smell, they said this smells like I've never smelled this smell on weed before, never in my life. And it's guys that are like 40 years experience, 50 years experience, never smelled that kind of profile in their life. And so I think there's this genetic diversity, it's something that needs to be preserved to make new stuff with, introduce new stuff to the
Yeah.
gene pool. Like,
I think for me, the most important thing is preserving it before losing it. And by preserving it, I
Absolutely.
mean crossing the plant to itself. Because
yep,
even when you cross a plant to a brother or sister, it might have different chromosomes from mom or dad, right?
yep,
And so what you're really doing is creating more of a genetic soup than really preserving
yes,
and locking down those traits that you've got in that one plant.
yes,
And so,
exactly.
selfing is kind of seen as like a bit taboo, or it's like, people say it's not how you make a clone of a plant. Sure, it's not.
It's
What
not the
it
point.
does is it captures those damn traits
Yep,
that we don't want to lose,
yep,
right? And it's like once you lock in those traits and you understand what the inheritance pattern is, then you know how to put it back together,
yep.
right? So once you know how to put it back together, then you can move it into different lines, right? So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I've got a plan of, because I kept the clones from the original seeds, we can still self them and preserve those originals, and then have those seeds run through the scanner and see if we can, find some interesting correlations with some
But
traits.
there's a difference, I think, with preserving the genetics in like a clone, like you say, Ryan, and also preserving the genetics as like in seed form. So you have as much possible males and females pollinating itself.
yeah.
And then you have actually the seed base where you can then derive a clone from, and then follow up on your suggestion to encapsulate that specific genetics to not get lost to the future, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. The
Yeah.
best, the smartest thing is always to do an open pollination to save
That's
everything.
what I mean.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yes. Because you preserve the largest genetic possibility with that.
yeah,
But with
and
the
then you
Haze,
take the
it's
opposite
it's
approach too.
difficult, eh?
Like you select the best
That's why
female.
I'm envy you guys in America. You can do it. Imagine you can do this shit. Really.
Yeah,
So I would say, yeah, Haze
it's not as easy
revival.
as the
I
breeding.
know, I know. It's the market and everything. I know it's
Yeah,
this niche market, so it will never be as great scale. But people that can pioneer now, man, you're sitting on gold. Just telling from experience.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Well, I think the real gold is it's like you said, you save everything, but then you
Hmm.
self the important plants,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
you create the really tight
Yeah.
inbred lines that can then
Hmm.
be used for future breeding or back crossing to the
Yes.
to the original open pollination or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Just
Then you
so,
bottleneck
like,
it more.
with the Haze, the open pollination, if you want to capture a full profile, is kind of an issue,
yeah,
because you have these males they're super early flowering, and
yeah,
then you have these females that won't flower for the next 3 months.
that's right.
So it in it like in the natural way, it's kind of difficult. But like artificially, that we now have the facilities to do that kind of work. It's still challenging, but it's becoming an ever increasing option that we have as a community.
Yes.
Another
Absolutely.
thing David used to do, he used to flower. He used to have a big pollen chamber, so he would create pollen from tons of different plants, and then he'd isolate the pollen and sift it, and desiccate it and dry it and freeze it. But then anytime he wanted to make any cross that he had, you just go in and pull out a little bit of the pollen, and you could do like a small pollination to make the crosses. So you weren't limited. But he is. I think there still are. Like I haven't opened the freezer since he passed away, but I believe there's jars of haze pollen in there too. So.
Yeah, so we not only keep the clones, but we keep the pollen as well from the males. So we keep some males alive as father plants, but like from that really early one, I have different vials of pollen saved in the freezer, just for when that day might come. But fortunately, it's already in a lot of the offspring from those original plants. So interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to touch on with you guys, albeit very briefly, because I have to head home at some point.
Yeah, me too, actually. I have to also end it. The plants don't wait.
What do you guys think about fermenting and fermentation as, making new products? Because like a lot of the old stuff that we would get, at least here in Europe, was, fermented, maybe partially, maybe fully. But fermenting cannabis, especially those tropical varieties, might bring out new flavor profiles as well that fresh plants can just not capture. So
it's true, but it's hard to achieve. You have to really probe it good.
Fermenting is biological, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it should start probably failing like regulations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it goes. Yeah, it's a fungi.
The specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as we don't have like very specific regulations on what type of fungi specifically, and it's still more on the total yield and mold count, you're saying that it's unlikely to happen, right?
I can see a lot of countries' regulations having problems with it, just because it's so against the like. As long as you've got this medical context under which the system runs, I think that's really going to be a stretch, right? Because the concern is all about the bioburden of the flower, or what they call the bioburden on the flower. And that's like things above a certain threshold have to be irradiated. Right.
Well, it's also why a lot of them reduce active water much lower than it needs to go.
Yeah.
They're removing bound water along with unbound water, and that is they do it in Canada. Like when Dave, who's going to come on from Canatrol and talk a little bit about this in the next couple of weeks, we'll get into this exact conversation about bound and unbound water. And how to go about just the losses that you take from bound water, which is natural weight of the flower. It's not like extra moisture that you need to get out so it tastes good. And it's not the water that feeds bacteria, yeasts, and molds. And so, yeah, it's a super interesting conversation that I'm looking forward to getting into about bound and unbound water. And the radiation is the irradiation is the next level, which is we're just going to irradiate everything. I think it's in Illinois where they have the number is like 1,000 for yeast and mold count, which means everything has to be irradiated, because in Michigan, for instance, it's 100,000 and people still fail there. If you can imagine, like 1,000 from 100,000 is the yeast and mold count in Illinois. So this becomes you would think from common sense that likely these companies were lobbying for these numbers, because who picks that number otherwise? It's so extremely low.
I won't say the state and I won't say the company, but you're totally right. and it was so bad that there was only 2 state licensed labs, right? And as they were introducing the new wave of licensing, it was basically everybody, oh yeah, if you're sending in a COA, make sure you zapped it with the rad source first. Like the labs were selling the units. It was like so corrupt. It was like the lab was like literally like, hey, you're gonna fail. You might as well buy this thing. You only get one test in this state. If you fail, it's a crop loss. So
Yeah.
therefore, let's start it. And it was also like, right at the beginning of it all, right? So it's like, why would you even create a system based off of everyone just failing?
Well,
And
they don't see the other side to the stick. You know, I had the conversation with these dudes from the company you're probably talking about in Spain one year, and I just sort of said to the guy, I said, the problem with your product is that it influences people to just grow shitty weed that gets mildew and not care for it because they can just irradiate it. And that's the problem. If it was just we're going to have reasonable numbers that are absolutely in place to protect the consumer. If it's medical, even next level, let's protect the consumer, not against doing that, but just you know, if it's there to save the family farm, like, you know, you're some company, you've been selling weed for 3 or 4 years in the market, it's a family run business, you do a big crop for you, it's not huge, it's still craft, but it's big for you, and somehow you fail this microbial number, are you willing to like throw that crop away now? Or is now this the time and only time that you'd be willing to irradiate your flower and just announce it to your customers and say, look, we were going to go out of business if we lost this crop. This is what we have. We did irradiate it. We're selling it at a discount. I mean, I would rather transparency myself. I hate the idea of people getting put out of business because, you know, they have these numbers in place and they have these things in place that you could be like, no, I don't care, man. I'll never irradiate my weed. I'll just go out of business. It's like, oh shit. So it's a weird kind of, I would love the herb never to be irradiated, yet at the same time, people who are like, I'll never smoke irradiated weed are like drinking irradiated coffee for breakfast, and like there's irradiation is playing a part throughout their lives that they might not realize. So I'm not trying to defend it by any means. I think it's definitely a bummer, and that the fact that it exists, there's a whole group of people who are like, it doesn't matter if we fail for yeast and molds because we're always going to irradiate our entire crop. That's the bummer side of it for me.
That negatively impacts the rest of the market for the people
Of
that are doing
course.
it right. And then now because you
100%.
can't irradiate, you're just going to grow tons of crappy weed and flood the market with cheap crappy weed that you spend no money to grow because you can't irradiate it. So it's like I agree with what you're saying. There's ideally there's some sort of remediation process, but by allowing it, you're basically messing it up for everybody else that is doing it right,
100%.
you know? And
100%.
so, you know, make remediation illegal again.
Yeah.
well, on the
I,
Haze note, that was it. That is an issue, and I think Don brought that up earlier. That and I know like a commercial grower who's a huge Haze fan who wanted to and tried to introduce Haze into their facility, multi-acre facility, and it was the big issue was the longer that plant's in there, the more likely it is to have a pest and pathogen issue.
of course.
And the funny part was, and it did, and that's was the problem. But it wasn't the Haze that was attracting the pests. What was going on is they'd cut down the 9-10 week crop, and all the bugs that were on those plants would go looking for new plants, and the only ones that were left in the greenhouse were the later flowering ones. So, like in one given year, all the later flowering stuff has more opportunities to get pests from its neighboring plants. So it was, and I get that. So like then you're losing 25 to 35% of your entire year is in one cycle. So it's like that is a big issue, and that's just the agronomic stuff. It has nothing to do with the market or preference or anything. So to me, the big trick with getting these profiles to the market still has to do with reducing flower time and some architecture stuff to make it just a little bit more viable for the average grower and more viable for as many different types of cultivation strategies as possible. So that no matter where you are, no matter how you grow it, this thing can fit into your market. Because some markets are all like, Florida's an indoor market because of the climate. So the whole market is indoor, like for the most part, or they're converted greenhouses that are running off of HVAC sometimes. So it's like you have to tailor.
Speaking for the market, I would agree with you. But speaking for like the people that grow it at home to like have it in their stash, I would disagree with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Because when you build off the flower time, you will build off the ripening from the resin glands. And it will be not as rich as this longer one. But I agree with you. Like most people would go for like maybe a 12-weeker, let's say. But so the 15-weeker or 20-weeker must also be available for these people. Then I'm talking about home growers. Then I'm talking about the problem also with regulations and legalization. And so you can build a corporation and grow 10,000 tons, but you cannot have a decent amount of flowers in your house. You know what I mean? Sometimes these regulations, still in Holland, it's also a problem. And that has also its particular play on what to be grown, because people don't want to risk a long flowering plant, etc., etc., etc. But building the long flowering plant to reduce your shorter type in a commercial area, I would go for the 12 weekers. If you bring that to people that are running facilities in America, they think you're crazy. It's long. And I'm like, it's short.
Yeah,
but anyway,
right.
you know what I mean?
And exactly, Sammy. So if you would grow a 12-weeker and we find a way to make that a 10-weeker, same genetics, without breeding, just by tweaking the cultivation method, suddenly your range goes up to basically 14 weeks.
Yes, but you grow it directly from seed under 12. And so predominantly people will give it veg at least for 3 weeks, let's say, and then start. And so it's
Yeah, so
this technique
that's
you
exactly
developed
why.
is also important.
Yeah, but that's exactly why we say no veg, no problem, right?
Yes.
Well, also there's the fact that one day
But you don't increase the flower time. You decrease the vegging time.
Right.
Yeah,
But there's
Right.
in countries around the world, one day in equatorial regions, we'll be growing plants for international distribution. So all this conversation about like trying to cram it in, crab that square peg into a round hole, one day it'll be back to where it was 100 years ago, which is grown in the most ideal climate for that plant, because all the regulatory shit will be stripped away. And we'll be seeing all kinds of different plants grown, especially, where they grow best. Back to the Florida, like Florida would be great growing equatorial varieties if they could send them to Michigan.
Absolutely.
And Michigan would do great growing little small indoor things that they can grow in a facility and sending it to Florida. It's like, it's just, it's kooky.
Can I ask Ryan a question? I'm curious, is there any reason why you could not breed a 9-week flowering variety that has all the chemical properties of a 20-week variety? You're muted.
Theoretically, no.
Right.
In practice, it's a little bit more complicated because it has to do with like finding recombinant chromosomes that have the right combinations of traits. I mean, it's like Mojave was saying about the chemistry of these Afghan plants. Maybe there's more than just myrcene, right? Like maybe it has to do with other chemicals than even just the terpenes. What I mean is the high is different, right? And so that's the type of thing that you'd want to do by only changing the specific genes related to flowering time. And we're starting to understand those genes now too, like at a molecular and genetic level. Like we can actually breed plants using molecular markers for flowering time now.
Right. So theoretically, at least maybe it's not the exact chemical composition to a T, but it could be nearly the same thing, especially to the average regular consumer. That wouldn't the more effective method of trying to supply these types of profiles to the consumer just be to take the profile of the longer flowering plant and breed it into a productive plant instead of chasing down a production method for Haze varieties?
The genetic linkages would throw a wrench in that, right?
It's complicated. It's not a simple process because there's something called linkage on chromosomes. So traits come in like little gene neighborhoods, right? So it's really easy to select like chunks of neighborhoods, but to go in and mash half of a genetic neighborhood with half of another one, like they're called recombinants. Okay, so it's where you have a fusing of two of the parent chromosomes, and they become like a new half and half thing in the grandchildren, right? And like the frequency of that happening between the genes that you really want to reassemble is quite low. So although it's possible to do it, it's like a really ambitious target.
I think we've seen good success happen in cannabis, though, taking these equatorial varieties, hybridizing them, and ending up with stuff like I think sage is a perfect example. Like
Hey,
in my room right now,
Well, obviously.
I have sage TK, I have sage OG that I'm pretty sure came from Umo, and
yes, it
then
did.
and then I have that crossed to Triangle Kush again, right? And I have like a handful of those running. Super
So
sage terpinolene dominant. Some of the best resin I've ever seen. Buds that are like this long and that big around, but it smells like halitosis with like just the lime, like
yeah.
straight OG halitosis and lime terpinolene. And
Oh, that's
it's like
beautiful.
Yeah, well,
Well,
it
to
that's
me,
smells awesome. You
I
know,
think
exactly what we're
the
talking
resin
about.
on it, it's like impressive resin, like without question.
I think the resin is the key, though. So, like, there's been a lot of hybrids from Haze over the years that are great, and they really tick a lot of the boxes. Never all of them, but a lot of them. And I think Sage is the perfect example of that. Thank you. But everything I've ever grown, ever, I've never got there under 10 weeks, ever.
These are 9 right now,
Well,
and
well,
I
no,
have
but
some
I'm
of
just
them.
saying,
Yeah, I have
I've
some of
got,
them that smell just like your sage.
well,
Not
I
even
have no,
double cross to OG, but they smell just like sage. If you rolled them up for me, I don't think I could tell you the difference. And I've
no,
got a
I
pretty
no, and I
good nose.
agree. I've got some 60-day stuff as well, and some 63 and 65-day stages that are great. But I mean, in terms of the haze spectrum, the question that I have, and this would be a question, I guess, for Dominic and for Ryan, is that to me, long flowering varieties, I've always assumed that what makes them magical is the combination of immature, mature, and overripe glands. That because it's indeterminate, it's never just ripe or just immature or just overripe.
Exactly.
There's always this combination. So there's the aging component of that gland that's why I think at a 12 to 14 week range, you can get enough aged glands in
Yep.
there and you still got
Yep.
fresh glands that you get this complexity in the chemistry, but you can't do it in 9 because none of those glands were around long enough to get there.
I think you guys should all come up here, and I've got jars of all this stuff, and you guys can blind test all these theories because I got all. Etienne knows what's up. We can do it all day long.
Sounds great. I might have to take you up on that.
Because I have samples of pretty much everything we're talking about. The pures, second generation varieties that are 9 weeks that smell just like it, and it just like the original, say the real sativa leaning or narrow leaf leaning varieties. And it's like, well, how much of this is discernible by consumption, I guess, is my real question, because that's what our target really is at the end of the day, the consumer, right? So
Yeah, you're doing exactly what I said in that talk. You're shuffling a thiol layer on top of the terpene layer.
Yep.
Right. So
just shuffling layers.
I'm gonna
It's
let you
all just
go. For me, it's plant time. I have to go work. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on, Sammy.
Here's Sammy.
Ciao, Sammy. See you soon,
Time
buddy.
machine he goes.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, really appreciate
Bye-bye.
you coming and sharing with
Bye-bye.
us on the Haze episode today. It's been pretty good.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was really nice to get acquainted better with you all. And so great information. So thank you all. And so hooray for the haze, would I say. Okay. Good night, my time. Bye-bye.
We'll say hi to the plants.
Ciao, Sammy.
I will. Bye-bye.
That's great. I guess there's Dom is still here. I thought maybe you
man.
left as well, Dom.
I'm gonna jump into the car, but first I'm gonna take some veggies home.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, we're wrapping up here in the next 5 to 10 minutes as well. That was an awesome episode. Didn't get to hear from you as much as usual, Etienne. Anything to share before we bounce?
I saw an amazing movie last night in San Francisco called Join the Club about Dennis Perone and the old scene. And holy shit, was it fucking cool. For me, it's a time capsule. So I got to see all kinds of, I was also my memory failing because I was back in my 20s back then, and I'm seeing all this now in my 50s. And I'm like, oh, what's that person's name? Oh, what's that person's name? Oh shit. You know, it was definitely one of those situations. But it captured the spirit of what went down, and how, of course, all this came from a struggle because of the AIDS crisis, and this all comes from medicine. So we all love cannabis, but it was fascinating to rewatch and to see some of the history I was unaware of, because Dennis went to Vietnam at a young age, and he got turned on to pot at a young age, and he came back from Vietnam with 3 fucking pounds and sold that shit. So there's legends of shit. Don't get me wrong. I did score hash while I was in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, but I did not bring, I wish I could have brought home 3 kilos of fucking prime Lebanese hash from the Bekaa Valley. Yeah, no, not happening. But it's just great to see a reminder of, as well as I saw Ed Rosenthal there. I saw Dale Garinger, Nate Landau, Mike Davis, our veterans were there as well. It was just really fun experience because everybody in there had lived through it. There was all kinds of survivors from, AIDS, cancers to everything in there. And it was a raucous group. And the ad libs and fun, especially when Dan Lundgren and the cops showed up. Oh man, could have. It was loud and fun, but it was an amazing experience. And if anybody gets the chance, definitely check out Join the Club, Story of Dennis Perone. It was fucking special. And yeah, it was just great to see a whole bunch of old school family there. Jeff Jones and Dale, Sky Jones, who do Oaksterdam University, amongst others. So it's great to hug and see people I haven't seen literally in decades when we were all breaking the law. Because I used to provide clones, to, Dennis, weekly by the thousands. So to see a lot of the old people in the old clubs and to reminder all that was also um, a nice reminder of where we come from and what we've done, what we've accomplished, what we failed. Don't get me wrong, we've fucked up and failed along the way too. But at the same time, it was a beautiful reminder of how this all started, why it matters, why it continues to matter. And what this conversation's been about today is probably some of the best medicine people have found, these long flowering equatorials that really, I started off on Durban Poison, right? Which is back in the 80s, which is a terpinolene dominant varietal. I didn't grow it very well. I did not get the greatest expression the first time I grew it. However, I got an understanding for the feel of the flavor that should be there. And it's just been amazing to watch the growth, the contraction, the hate, because there's also been hate on these long equatorials because during all the grow days in the medical, everybody was growing indoors. There wasn't a lot of outdoors, all about indoor, GH, 144 or 72 plants in a 4x8 area, basically straight from clone into flowering. So you're just growing, small buds and flowers. So we shaped the medical cannabis off of something that would not allow these long flowering equatorials, which is a shame because if that medicine had been available, I think some of the problems as well as the expectation of the consumer would be different because unfortunately all these prohibition driven growth cycles forced the 6 to 8 weekers to the forefront of everything and really pushed aside anything from 9 weeks on to fuck off. And we perpetuated that. We pushed it. We tried when I was with Ed. We tried putting out long flowering equatorials. Nobody wanted them. People only wanted what they wanted, and the consumers in California that were growing for medical kind of drove that. Except, thankfully, for the outdoor grower who chose to maintain, save these things, thanks to the the Rob Clarks and and especially the David Watsons for seeing its value and perpetuating it so that we even know what it is to this day, right? Because so many flowers, like what I even have tattooed on my arm, is come and gone. They no longer exist. And to know, to see, and to hear so much of that lineage that's been traced through David, through each one of your special journeys alongside him, along the way, has been a fruitful find for the community as a whole, because there's few genetics that we can take apart and walk back and have so many players that were involved to understand so much of the layers of this, but also appreciate what it has built, what it's been built on and from. It's just been just that self alone is its own become its own set of encyclopedias of knowledge, of information, of genetics, of growers, and everything else that's siphoned from just that one genetic, right? I mean, look at all. I mean, all of us have all been little Sherlock Holmes to a certain resolve, trying to uncover pieces of the history so that we now have a full picture, right? We all had pieces of puzzles, but now we have almost a full picture of what we're looking at for just one genetic, right? Just one genetic out of the thousands that are out there, right? So it's just been fascinating, this whole conversation, but it's also its encapsulation of the genius that touched us all, as well as how it touched so many people's lives and how it has endured for generations and continues to endure. And now, because of its history and all of your knowledge and forethought, we will have that history and it will live on in a way that not many genetics will.
That's some epic words, Etienne.
I have a way with words from time to time.
Long live. Beautiful. Yes, that'll take us out, brother. That was perfect. I want to thank Dom from Nexo to coming in from Holland and spending the full 4 hours with us right till the end, driving in his car, like right till the end, dude, which is awesome. Thank you, Caleb and Mojave and Ryan and Fletch, Etienne, Colin, who was in earlier, and the guys from Budulero. Thank Rob for popping in. Always a pleasure to have Rob jump in, especially because he was there. We're talking about these old stories. Rob was there. He's kind of the only one at this point in time. So that was awesome. Yeah, thank you to the press club. Thank you guys for your sponsorship. Thanks to Puffco, as always, keeping us laced up and puffing tough on the Puffcos. And thanks to Helio Supply. Thank you, Jared. Shout out to you and your company. And hopefully my brand will end up getting in touch with you. He sent me a cool little product, actually. I only saw these for the first time. Cliff from Low Temp had one of these in Colorado. So just a little vape pen, but I guess it's one that hides the 510 cartridge. I guess these things roll off tables and break and shatter. So there's a lot of people who are just like, I don't want people to ask me if I'm hitting THC pens. So they put their little carts in here. And this whole thing's like a battery. So you just hit it like that. So I thought that was a pretty cool product. That's one of Helio's products. You can go support him over at Helio Supply. And otherwise, shout out to Bubble Bags and Grandmaster LED. And thank you, everyone in the chat room, for watching and listening. Bingo Lombardi holding it down hardcore. Robert in Valencia, Spain. Carol LEDs, shout out to you. Shout out to Diana, who was in the chat for most of the episode, sharing little tidbits there. We love you, Diana. Always sending good vibes your way. And to anyone I may have forgot to thank, my apologies. It was Sammy. Thanks for Sammy coming out. He literally just left. I almost missed Sammy. So in the meantime, we will gather again next Sunday, but for now, may the full melt bless your bowl sooner than later. That's it. That's a wrap. We're out. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Peace
Bye.
out.
Thank you, Marcus.
Fletch is puffing us out. He's puffing us out.
Thanks for coming, Dom.